Good morning and welcome to our September 8th, 2022 Board Business Meeting. Welcome to our board members, MCPS staff, and members of our community who are joining us here today, and to those who are watching this meeting via live stream on the MCPS website and MCPS TV. At this time, I would like to also welcome Maryland State Board of Education member Lori Morrow, who is joining us today. Welcome. Now let us begin by standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll now call the roll to establish a quorum, starting with Mr. Kim.
Good morning, everyone.
Ms. Harris.
Good morning, everyone.
Ms. Mandrowski.
Good morning.
Ms. Silvestri.
Good morning.
Dr. Daka.
Good morning.
Ms. Evans.
Good morning.
Dr. Joftis.
Good morning.
And I'm Brenda Wolf. Now we can begin the meeting with the approval of the revised agenda.
Move approval.
Second?
All in favor, raise your hand. And that is unanimous. Okay, so, Dr. McKnight?
Thank you, President Wolf. So I will move forward the monthly Human Resources and Development Report for approval.
Move approval.
Can I get a
Second.
all in favor, raise your hand. And that is unanimous.
Thank you. Today we do have one appointment and several recognitions. I'll begin with our first appointment that we are bringing forward. That appointment is for Ms. Stephanie R. Izzard, Executive Assistant in the Office of the School System Medical Officer. Ms. Izzard has been employed with Montgomery County Public Schools for 3 years as a program manager and most recently as a coordinator for student health care services in the Office of the School Medical Officer. Ms. Izzard looks forward to cross-office collaboration as well as school-based and stakeholder collaboration in order to meet the physical health and mental well-being of our MCPS community. She would like to give a shout-out to her daughter, Caitlin, son, Zachary, and a special warm shout-out to her new grandson.
Move approval.
Second?
All in favor, raise your hand. And that is unanimous.
Congratulations. Congratulations, Ms. Izzard. Thank you. So we do have a number of recognitions that we are excited to bring forward today. And the first is recognizing Montgomery County Public Schools Educational Foundation Scholarship Award recipients. The Montgomery County Public Schools Educational Foundation Incorporation is committed to providing opportunities for Montgomery County Public Schools graduating students by awarding scholarships to those who seek financial assistance to pursue post-secondary education. The MCPS Educational Foundation has demonstrated this commitment since 1999 by raising contributions from private sector donors and by partnering with Maryland delegates and senators representing Montgomery County to award need-based scholarships totaling more than $3 million to MCPS graduates. The Montgomery County Public Schools Educational Foundation recently concluded another annual scholarship fundraising effort, receiving private contributions totaling more than $113,500 in the support of scholarships and awards to MCPS graduates. The Montgomery County Public Schools Educational Foundation recently concluded its 2022 scholarships and award selection processes, which award 14 scholarships and awards worth $129,200 to the class of 2022 high school graduates and renewed scholarships for 13 previous scholarship recipients who are continuing their collegiate studies. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Education congratulates the Montgomery County Public Schools Educational Foundation Incorporation in another successful annual scholarship campaign for the benefit of MCPS graduates, in need of financial assistance to attend college, and therefore it be further resolved that on behalf of the Superintendent of Schools, staff members, students, and parents, and members of the Board of Education, we extend their congratulations to this year's Montgomery County Public Schools Educational Foundation Scholarship Award winners who graduated from MCPS schools in June of 2022, all of whom are awarded privately funded scholarships.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hand. And that is unanimous.
Thank you, and congratulations to the scholarship recipients. Our next recognition is recognition for National Suicide Prevention Week. Montgomery County Public Schools is committed to mental health and wellness of all students through promotion, prevention, and awareness. The American Association of Suicidology and the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention have designated September 4th through September 10th, 2022 as National Suicide Prevention Week, including World Suicide Prevention Day on September 10th, 2022. 2, educate and inform the public about suicide prevention and warning signs of suicide, reduce stigma related to suicide, encourage the pursuit of and normalize mental health treatment, advocate for funding and research on suicide and suicide prevention, develop innovative and effective treatments, and emphasize the need to focus on suicide prevention every day of every year. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention report suicide continues to be the third leading cause of death in the United States among individuals between the ages of 10 and 24 years, and the third leading cause of death in Maryland for individuals between the ages of 10 and 34. Montgomery County Public Schools continues to support the use of the evidence-based Signs of Suicide Prevention Program in all secondary schools to raise awareness of and prevent suicide through education about resources and supports. MCPS places an importance on mental and emotional health as one of the cornerstones of the Be Well 365 Health and Wellness Initiative, and through the implementation of a system-wide social-emotional learning curriculum, Leader in Me. Now therefore be it resolved that the Montgomery County Board of Education and Superintendent of Schools hereby proclaim September 4th through September 10th as National Suicide Prevention Week in Montgomery County Public Schools and recommend observance to all of our school communities.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hand. That is unanimous.
Thank you. Our next recognition is for Hispanic Heritage Month. Hispanic Heritage Month celebrates the histories, cultures, and contributions of residents living in the United States who trace their ancestral roots to Spain, Mexico, and Spanish-speaking countries of Central America, South America, and the Caribbean. Hispanic people have resided on land that became the United States for hundreds of years, and the histories of the United States and Latin America have been connected through geography, economics, imperialism, politics, immigration, and culture. Individuals of Hispanic descent are ethically, religiously, and politically diverse. Hispanics have made valuable contributions to the United States, including culture, government, military service, economics, sports and arts, education, and numerous other distinctions. MCPS is committed to inclusive curricula and creating a welcome and affirming learning environment, as well as equitable learning experiences for all Hispanic students. And MCPS takes pride in having a diverse workforce that includes Hispanic staff members. Now therefore be it resolved that the Montgomery County Board of Education and the Superintendent of Schools hereby declare September 15th to October 15th, 2022 to be Hispanic Heritage Month in Montgomery County Public Schools.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hand. That is unanimous.
Thank you. And our final recognition for today is recognition of the Silver Spring, Maryland chapter of the Links Incorporated Scholarship Award recipients. The Silver Spring, Maryland chapter of the Links Incorporated is part of one of the nation's oldest and largest volunteer service organizations of extraordinary women who are committed to enriching, sustaining, and ensuring the culture and economic survival of African Americans and other persons of African ancestry. For more than 50 years, the Silver Spring, Maryland chapter of the Links Incorporated has dedicated itself to serving the residents of Montgomery County and the surrounding communities with an emphasis on youth and families, conducting dynamic educational, cultural, civic, and health-related community programs and offering scholarships. The Silver Spring, Maryland chapter of the Links Incorporated scholarship program is designed to offer opportunities for students who are committed to the pursuit of academic excellence through matriculation at a four-year college or university, graduate or professional school, two-year community college or technical school. The Silver Spring, Maryland chapter of the Links Incorporated Scholarship Program is grounded in a commitment to enhancing and extending students' knowledge through education and a commitment to serving the community. The Silver Spring, Maryland chapter of the Links Incorporated awarded nearly $24,000 in student scholarships to both first-time and continuing education Montgomery County Public School students who are dedicated to furthering their education and giving back to their communities. The Montgomery County Board of Education sincerely commends Silver Spring, Maryland chapter of the Links Incorporated on their generous and vital scholarships to Montgomery County Public School students. Now therefore be it resolved that the Montgomery County Board of Education expresses profound gratitude to the Silver Spring, Maryland chapter of the Links Incorporated for their commitment and dedication to our students and the community. And be it further resolved that on behalf of the Superintendent of Schools, staff, students, and parents, and members of the Board of Education extend their congratulations to this year's Silver Spring, Maryland chapter of the Links Incorporated 2022 Scholarship Award recipients and continuing scholars.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hand. That is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say that I'm wearing green for the Silver Spring Links Incorporated, but I'm going to put my purple shirt on. Thank you for reading every word.
Thank you, Dr. Docker. Our next item on the agenda is public comments. Public comments is one of our opportunities to hear the views and receive the advice of community members. Board members will take your comments into consideration, but it is not our practice to take action at this time on issues that are raised. We encourage public input on policy, program, and practices. This is not the proper avenue to address specific student or employee matters, so we encourage everyone to utilize existing avenues of redress for complaints. This is a public meeting, and we expect the conduct of all speakers and members of the audience to be within the bounds of proper etiquette. Inappropriate personal remarks, rude retorts, or other such behavior is out of order and will not be tolerated. Those who demonstrate disruptive or disrespectful behavior during public comments may be asked to leave the room. Please check our website for information about upcoming board meetings, hearings, and work sessions, including any changes to our meeting start times. We have 6 people signed up to provide in-person testimony. Each speaker will receive 2 minutes for comments. When your name is called, please approach the table, speak clearly and directly into the microphone. 30 seconds prior to the expiration of a speaker's time, a yellow light will go on accompanied by a beep. A red light and a buzzer signals that your time has expired. Please push the flat button below the microphone to turn it off, and push the same button to turn it on, and push the same button again to turn it off. In addition to our in-person speakers today, we have 1 audio testimony and 3 video presentations. We will play these submissions once the in-person testimonies have concluded. Copies of the testimonies can be found on board docs, where they are posted with the other materials for this meeting. So at this time, I call to the table Nico Durazio, Edith Gibson, and Michelle Joseph. Yeah, that's good. Okay. Can somebody help her with move the chair out the way, please?
I just put them right on.
Okay, all right. So could you please speak in the order that you were called?
Good morning, members of the board and Dr. McKnight. My name is Nico Durazio, and I am a junior at Thomas S. Brewing High School. I am advocating for the review and the revision of MCPS's Memorandum of Understanding regarding the Community Engagement Officer Program. It is no secret why police presence in schools is detrimental. School resource officers fuel the school-to-prison pipeline and contribute to arrest disparities. Moreover, an inverse correlation exists between an SRO presence in schools and less violence, as well as furthering a conducive learning environment. Despite this, only 7 months after MCPS opens without police officers, COs were implemented in schools last April. The same program designed to keep officers out of schools evolved into one that affected the contrary. While the MOU regarding CEOs explicitly prevents them from enforcing MCPS policies, it lacks the concrete wording necessary to regulate CEOs' actions. Based on the MOU, CEOs may participate in assemblies and other staff-student events. Within this vague language, it could be justified that CEOs are present in schools when any minor events are occurring, whether or not security is necessary. Effectively, CEOs who are armed and sworn police officers may arrest students in schools for breaking laws and or committing crimes that would have previously been managed by school administration. Thereby, by allowing CEOs in schools, the MOU opens the door, especially for students of color and students with disabilities, to continue to be disproportionately introduced to the criminal justice system. If CEOs are truly meant to be a positive connection with school communities, it is imperative that the MOU is revised to desist CEOs from arresting students for crimes lesser than those which would initiate a school service call, and to explicitly regulate the school events in which they may attend. If this does not occur, the vague language of the MOU may result in higher arrest rates and a detrimental learning environment. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Edith Gibson?
That's me.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Edith Gibson. I am the mother of a student within the special education department. And I am here this morning because my daughter and I have lived in this district for 4 years. In the 4 years, she has not had a free and appropriate education. A free education, meaning I, as her mother, don't have to pay for transportation to get her back and forth to school. An appropriate education because my daughter has a rare genetic disorder with intensive needs. The district, in terms of the placement where she's at, has been unwilling to take baseline data. I'm an accountant, so if you have a problem, you create a solution. If you don't have any baseline data in order to address a problem, you can't create any meaningful solution. My daughter has not had a free and appropriate education for 4 years. Granted, that some say she lost services because of COVID-19, and a lot of children may have, but this problem persisted as of May 2019 until today. She's here with me because I am a former educator. I've been having to educate her. So every time the school district, specifically the special education administrator, Philip Lynch, decides that my daughter is not entitled to services, I have been the one making sure that she gets occupational therapy, speech therapy, and physical therapy. I reach out to the chain of command, whether before it was Mr. Smith or Dr. Smith. I know he's no longer here, but I've reached out to the current Dr. McKnight's office, and all I do is get the runarounds. And so, in the words of Fannie Lou Hammer, I am sick and tired of being sick and tired. And this has to stop, because whether it's my child or the 52 other parents that's on my Twitter news feed saying that they can't get services, this is unacceptable.
Thank you. Michelle Joseph?
Hello, everyone. My name is Michelle Joseph. I am a mother of a Montgomery County Public School student. I also am a daughter of a Montgomery County school teacher. I went to Montgomery County Public Schools, and I'm an owner of 2 businesses in Moco. And I attribute my lovely haircut to being a survivor for cancer. This is my second go-around. I'm also a concerned resident. I wanted to first applaud the board for the policy that was passed and updated in June, specifically ECA policy that focused on sustainability. And I'm bringing this up because I had some questions specifically tied to a concern we have for our youth. One of the things that I know that you are familiar with is climate anxiety. It is a real thing that I learned about recently. And apparently in 2021, Nature did a study worldwide, and they conducted the study about 10,000 youth ages 16 to 25. And what they found was the students, or the youth rather, were very worried and very concerned about climate action and climate change. The number one country was Brazil, and this was 60% of the youth. When we participated and got our students involved in our climate, in our fall park cleanup, we actually asked our students what their thoughts were about climate action, and 72% of them also said it was a concern. The reason I'm bringing this up is I wanted to find out, based on what was shared with regard to sustainability, what actions may be taken or exhibited or focused on for middle and high school students specifically.
Thank
regarding
you. We
climate
have your
action.
testimony. Thank you very much. All right. I'm going to call up the next group to the table. Thank you. Give them a minute to leave. I'm going to call Laura Stewart, Esther Wells, and Zanib Abbas.
May I start?
Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Laura Stewart. I'm here today as an education advocate. I was not planning on being here today, but after being on a call yesterday with nonprofit providers of services to residents and children, I felt compelled to come here today to follow up on some action that was done at the last board meeting. There was a story about a woman who deals with kids that need free and reduced lunch. She helps families actually fill out forms who aren't literate and that need some help to get through the system. And she checked in with one child and asked how his week was going and found out that he did not get lunch that week. He did not get lunch because of a two-year-old debt of less than $1. I don't know what the communication with this child, but the end result is that he didn't get lunch. So the provider did work with the school, and it got taken care of. It was a misunderstanding. The cafeteria worker just didn't get all the information needed to make sure that that child got lunch. So this problem's taken care of, but it highlights an issue. Do parents know that every child can get a lunch, whether you qualify or don't for farms? Do children know? Are they being communicated? Do you have lunch today? If you don't, go get lunch. That needs to be communicated in all schools, maybe in a poster form, some kind of campaign. I do understand in the new message coming out today on Things to Know that there will be information that even if you don't qualify for farms, that you can get lunch. But I don't know if it's, is it its own headline? It needs to be a campaign because we do not need children going through their school day without a meal. It is bad for our system, it is bad for the child. And I know you guys want to do well.
Thank you. Ms. Wells.
Good morning, Board of Education members, Superintendent McKnight, and MCPS students, parents, and staff. My name is Esther Wells, and I am the proud mother of two boys, a 4-year-old and a 9-year-old who has developmental disabilities. I am a certified public accountant, and I care about ensuring that our schools have a plan that upholds its commitment to the community, our staff, and students. That is why I'm here today. First, I would like to acknowledge MCPS leadership team and Board of Education members for their visibility and community engagement in the first week of school. It was so powerful and meaningful to see an all-hands-on-deck presence welcoming our amazing students back to school. With that said, I have one very important issue of concern to call out today. On May 10th, I testified to the board of the impeding staff shortage for ESY and asked for an update as to whether there is sufficient staffing for the extended school year summer school program for our special needs kids. I was very disappointed when 7 weeks later, 175 students in our special education program were given less than a week to shift to a virtual format due to staffing shortage. On July 26th, I testified to this board asking that you commit to schools being open without the disruption of this past school year. We continue to experience staff shortage for special education. Only one teacher transferred to special education in the latest strategy to incentivize dual certified teachers to close the gap. So here I am, 4 months later, asking the board and MCPS the same question. Can you please update the community on other incentives that are measurable to meeting the needs of our most vulnerable students? Students in special education programs are among the most negatively affected by school closures. When will the disruptions of the last school year end for them? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you for having me here. I sit here as a mother of 6 children. One of them is currently a mechanical engineer. Another one is a systems engineer and has a bachelor's degree in accounting. I say this because underrepresented students, a lot of them do not have access to STEM education. I founded SciTech to You 11 years ago to offer STEM education to students who don't have access to STEM education. I grew up in Kangar. I went to Walter Johnson High School, and I also have background in biotechnology. SciTech to You offers experiential learning. The students do not just sit and read and learn about science. Our program offers students opportunity to actually experience it. Our students have gone flying airplane in our aeronautics program, dissected hearts, brains, frogs. Our students have had access to 3D printing, where they get 3D printers, take it home, and are able to expose their family and friends to STEM. Our students built robots, worth $500, and they get to take those home. I would like to know, what is the county doing to offer students in the underrepresented communities access to STEM education? Thank you.
Thank you. We've received one audio testimony submitted by Emily Iverson. Please play the audio.
Hello, my name is Emily Iverson, and I am a 4th grade ELD teacher at Sergeant Shriver Elementary School with 7 years of teaching experience. I love teaching, and my school is great. But unfortunately, I have not had the normal new school year experiences because I became ill with COVID from pre-service. I have been vaccinated, boosted twice. I always wear a mask everywhere and have been vigilant with any and all COVID recommendations to keep myself, with asthma, and my family, including 2 small nieces, safe. This was my first time with COVID. I managed to keep COVID at bay over the last 2 years, until last week's pre-service, where 8 other people were also infected with COVID. I have now infected 3 additional members of my family. While the superintendent may think that the cloud of COVID-19 is receding, they seem to be ignoring the fact that COVID is still very much a threat. I'm very concerned and disappointed that MCPS has learned nothing from the failures and missteps that occurred last year. I was hopeful this year you would be thinking ahead to staff and students. I'm again left disappointed. Please reinstate last year's MOU, which included COVID leave with a respectable classroom coverage pay for educators that teach additional classes while their sick colleagues are absent. I and anyone who has had to deplete their leave already due to COVID should get their leave back, and emergency coverage pay should be increased and back paid too. We are still facing challenges with COVID, which require reasonable policies. So please, with urgency, act to make our work conditions fit the times.
We received 3 video testimonies. First up is Leticia Mitchell. Please play the video.
Good afternoon, members of the board, and thank you for this opportunity to address you here today. My name is Leticia Mitchell, and I am a staff development teacher here at Stedwick Elementary School. In the spirit of educators wearing many hats, I am here today to speak on behalf of the Montgomery County Education Association as both a teacher and the contract negotiations team chair. As we embark on the next round of contract negotiations with MCPS, it is essential that we, as an organization, publicly highlight our priorities as they relate to our continued commitment to making Montgomery County the best place to provide and receive an education. As a reliable and productive partner to MCPS, we openly provide these priorities as professionals that are willing to give and receive transparency. Our schools are in crisis. The desire of some to minimize their own role in this crisis and to refuse accountability for many years of bad decision-making and to solely place blame at the feet of the union is inviting confrontation. Despite that, we believe that this is the year to unite with parents, students, and our community allies to end the backward slide. We are united in our efforts to achieve a contract that addresses the prominent issues facing our school system. In negotiations, we will center key priorities that include attracting and retaining high-quality educators and the development of model programs for students who receive special education services. We are committed to prioritizing student well-being, behavior supports, and educator health and safety by ensuring that every MCPS school has quality staffing and to recommend student-to-teacher ratios. To promote student professionalism means we will continue to have high-quality substitutes, but in larger numbers. This will allow for our members to not be illegally and voluntarily transferred again. If we accomplish all of this at the bargain.
Next is Aaron Droller. Please play the video.
Good morning, members of the Board of Education. My name is Aaron Droller, and I'm the father of 2 kids in 1st and 3rd grade in MCPS. I respectfully request today that you not reinstitute a mask mandate this school year and stay the course of the current successful mask optional policy. It's time to prioritize our kids' mental health and social emotional learning and give kids a normal school experience and predictable school experience. Holding a mask mandate over the heads of our kids serves no purpose other than to increase anxiety and isolation in the school environment. Several public witnesses spoke at last month's general business meeting asking for a mask mandate when CDC levels hit the so-called high threshold. This is a very dated and wrong approach to COVID-19 policy in Montgomery County. We are not where we were in 2020 or even 2021. I do not accept the premise that wearing masks is a low-cost intervention. It disproportionately damages special needs kids that struggle with social-emotional learning and communications challenges. This board made the correct decision to remove mask mandates last school year. The sky never fell, and it allowed our kids to move forward from this awful period. We've been without a mandate at the county level for quite some time, and our hospitals were fine even during the latest summer surge. There's just no clear and convincing evidence that mask mandates in schools makes any bit of a difference in controlling community spread. No children are capable of wearing a tight-fitting N95 mask for 7 hours a day. That's a fantasy. Nor should they. We are past the point with COVID where other parents and adults should be able to force my kids to wear masks to validate their own anxiety. This school year, every parent should be allowed to make that risk-benefit calculation for themselves. Please prioritize special needs kids who have suffered disproportionately under this pandemic and begin to rebuild trust. Please do not require masks in schools again. Thank you for your time and for your service to our county.
Next video is David Griffith. Please play the video.
President Wolf, members of the board, and Superintendent McKnight, my name is David Griffith, a parent of 3 MCPS students. I wanted to speak with you today about the inequitable treatment of different sports in MCPS athletics. As you know, fall sports teams are the only ones in MCPS not to have an entire season canceled due to COVID. Indeed, priority was given to conducting a half season of football and fall sports and to truncate the return of the spring sports schedule, even after these spring sports teams had already lost an entire season to COVID. Spring sports essentially lost a season and a half due to COVID, the hardest hit of all MCPS sports. Participants in fall sports are also the only ones never to have been required to be vaccinated against COVID. The vaccine mandate applied only to winter and spring sports participants last year, the only students in MCPS to be required to be COVID vaccinated. To add insult to injury, the decision to require winter sports athletes to be vaccinated last season happened during the fall sports season. To further add insult to injury, the vaccine mandate for MCPS athletics was lifted as the spring sports vaccinated students were concluding their seasons. Curiously, the case rates for unvaccinated Montgomery County residents are higher at present and have been since the decision was made not to require fall sports COVID vaccinations than the rates when the winter and sports vaccination mandate was imposed last year. Perhaps this glaring discrepancy between fall and winter and spring sports is that the Student Athlete Medical Advisory Committee for MCPS Athletics includes only one sports director representative, football. Why only football, a fall sport? And why, in the name of Title IX, is there not a director of a single girls' sport on this committee? So to recap, fall sports are the only ones never to have had a full season canceled due to COVID. Fall sports are the only participants never to have been required to be vaccinated. And football and fall sports are the only ones to have a representative of sports director serve on the Student Medical Advisory Committee for MCPS Athletics. Thank you for your time.
This concludes public comments. The next business meeting of the Board of Education for public comment is Thursday, September 22nd. Sign-ups will open the evening of September 15th, 2022. In addition to the online sign-ups for public comment, we have returned to the practice of in-person same-day sign-ups when space allows. Unallocated slots may be filled on a first-come, first-served basis on the day of the meeting. In order to sign up in person, please arrive at least 15 to 20 minutes before the start of the open session and sign the form. In-person sign-ups will close 15 minutes before public comment begins. At this time, I'll entertain any comments from my fellow board members. Dr. Daka?
Yes, I want to thank everyone for coming out today to speak with us, and also the persons that were audio and video. I do want to thank Nick D'Orazio, because this is a concern we've had for quite a while about the students disproportionately being arrested. We are working on the concern, the problem. We need to know how this happens. We need to de-escalate in the classroom as well. And we have been asking for statistics on the arrests. So I think we're working towards that now, and it does disproportionately affect Latino and African American students, and this is very disturbing because they're not in class, and it's not a good thing. And we're not accepting the fact that there are paper arrests. They're arrests, no matter what. So we've been talking about that, and I know that we're working with the police department on this kind of issue. And I want to thank the parent who brought her child today, and I really had a question about transportation. I hope somebody can answer that for us.
Thank you, Dr. Doctor. I had the same question. Ms. Harris?
Yeah, thank you. Just a couple of questions. With Ms. Joseph, who testified about the climate anxiety and mentioned our new sustainability policy, ECA, and I'm not really sure how to, this maybe goes to a system-wide thing as we embrace the new sustainability policy in all aspects of the work, maybe making really clear for families and students what the environmental and climate science components are going to be in our curricula. Because I know that is an area that the students have spoken to very clearly and have also offered to partner with MCPS around creation of some aspects of that curriculum. And then Ms. Stewart mentioned the issue that was thankfully resolved about a student not being able to get lunch because of a staff member who didn't understand that the presence of old debt wasn't a barrier, and making sure that we have clear student-friendly communications that tell every student, you can have any lunch you want, no questions asked, and make sure that that, at age-appropriate levels is being really thoroughly communicated throughout the school system, and maybe even partnering with some of our really powerful student graphic designers and communications folks to create some of that messaging to make sure it really is, messaging that's going to resonate with the students, because it is, as we've all acknowledged, nutrition is essential to being able to actively engage in learning. And so if we can just make sure all our staff has clear messaging and understands that there is no barrier, any barrier ever to any student getting any lunch that they want or any meal that they want, and make sure kids know it as well, because if kids are anxious, they're not going to access that. And then the last one, I wanted to raise up the parent that brought up STEM education with to underrepresented areas of the county, and I know that's an area of work, but I just wanted to point out the 47 beavers and their white paper that they came to us last time, and part of it was how do we extend, they were particularly focused on robotics, but how did they extend that across the county to all kinds of students without any barriers? And so just hoping that that partnership, that is happening, that they were going to meet, the 47 Beavers group were going to meet with, I can't remember, OSIP.
I just want to piggyback on what Ms. Harris said and remind you that the Saturday school does have a coding class that is registering right now, and it is all around the county. So I would encourage anybody that's interested to please get online and look up Saturday school. I also would like to suggest, can we have, and our chief of staff left, Mr. Fitzpatrick be in touch with Edith Gibson?
I believe that's why they're not in here.
I'd like to have Mr. Fitzpatrick, our ombudsman, be in touch with Ms. Gibson, because she's raised some concerns in my mind, and I don't think that we can address them here at the table, but I would like to have somebody contact her and get back to us about what is going on with that child. I see, did you want to respond to Ms. Harris, or can I do Ms. Silvestri first?
Well, I just wanted to acknowledge Ms. Harris's comments. I think the comments that first came, I want to thank everybody for coming and sharing, because as we know, when we roll out these policies, the intent and the plan is that it gets to every single child, every single staff member. And when that doesn't happen, it says there's an opportunity for us to do something more or different. So I really do like the idea about a campaign, Ms. Stewart, and thank you for raising that. And we will continue to go back now and really make sure that our staff members are aware and sharing with our students, exactly that they can get meals, and that the financial piece should not be a burden. That was the purpose of our policy, and so we will absolutely be astute to that. So thank you for raising that. And in terms of the sustainability plan, we're doing so many things there. I feel like we're now rolling with putting some of the items in our sustainability plan in action in so many different ways through our school system. So I do welcome the opportunity to engage additional community partners who want to be a part of that. So we look forward to following up as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Silvestri.
I wanted to bring up the lunch thing, but you've already addressed it. I did want to share that one of my clearest memories from elementary school was when I went from free lunch to reduced lunch. And why is that? Because everybody could see that I was now paying something. And that reduced my shame, my embarrassment that I was a free lunch student. So this is a big deal. Today we're going to talk about mental health and well-being, and our students are telling us that they need more help dealing with stress and the friendships aspect, which are very normal things. But being singled out for not having money to pay for your meal is a huge stressor for kids. And so I hope that we do implement this campaign so that everyone in the community knows, it's okay if you don't have the money today or the semester, the school year, you're going to get your lunch. And then finally, with STEM education, thank you for the testimony. I'm very curious, maybe we could have a follow-up. How would we answer that question? How is STEM integrated in our school system?
STEM education is science education. So it is, every student at every grade level is getting STEM education. It is not an after-school activity. Well, it is, as enrichment. Right. But I just want to emphasize that STEM education is part of our school day. Do we want it to be more interactive? Do we want it to be the latest and greatest? Robotics and so forth? Of course we do. But I just want to, it is part of our school day, and we are working to build additional enrichment opportunities for our children on Saturdays, after school, in clubs, and so forth. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Mandrowski.
Yeah, thank you. I too would just want to, I'll be brief, thank everyone for coming and testifying and bringing issues to our attention. I had concerns over the testimony of Ms. Gibson and the situation with her daughter. I did reach out to Mr. Stockton, and I believe he's out talking with her now to get information on how we can better understand the situations. But just to clarify, it was my understanding that special education students all received transportation to the programs that they are assigned. Is that not correct?
No, that is correct. That is absolutely correct, Ms. Mandrowski, and particularly if there's any particular needs that have to be considered around transportation, it's also included in the student's IEP. So I too appreciate Ms. Gibson coming forward, and the staff is out doing exactly what we expect at this point, which is to understand specifically what is happening so we can most importantly meet the student's needs and working with the parent to do so, Mrs. Gibson, in this case.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we're up to item number 6, and I'll ask Dr. McKnight to proceed.
Thank you so much, Ms. Wolf. And as we go into this item number 6, I was actually hoping this would happen, that everyone would not leave after public comment. And I thought that today, as I sat here and listened to all of the testimony in person, the video, the audio, there was a theme I felt like that emerged from much of the comment today, and it really does come back to the well-being of students, staff, whatever it may be, whether it's an academic need that we want to make sure students have to make sure we're addressing their interest, whether it is how do we adjust still with COVID. It's not absent, but it's not here the way that it was 2 years ago. So how do we make sure we're adjusting that? And how do we just address all of the needs that exist for our students and staff for them to be successful? And I was very appreciative as I knew that this was going to be our agenda topic today, really focused on well-being, because what better time than to start the year out with how are we truly operationalizing this in so many different ways in our school system, from students having meals to the experience that they have from the minute they get on a bus, if they're riding a bus, to the minute that they step into a school. And then most importantly, how do we continue to work with our families and equip our families to have what they need so when our students leave school, that partnership continues and we're providing that support to families so that we are connected around this priority. So I know the room is full, but I did just want to say that it's also full because we had a number of other staff members come in, and they are here, and I'm also welcoming, I believe we have members from Department of Health and Human Services here with us today as well. And so, again, very appreciative that we are in partnership. And I do have to say this personally. This is a large system, and there are many things that we talk about at this table. Last week, when I had the opportunity to visit 21 schools with many of you as board members, and I can say this with true conviction and honesty, I have never seen wellness represented in the school spaces the way that I've seen it for myself this year. Every classroom. I mean, I will be here all day if I start calling names, but in classrooms, you would see the spaces where there are messages, confirming messages for students, where they can go and take their wellness breaks with a number of activities that they can do. The wellness rooms have gone to a whole nother level in our school buildings, thankful to the creativity of our staff members who put all types of things in that space to take into consideration what every student or staff member may need. I was at an elementary school where the staff, yes, they have a staff lounge, but they also made a wellness space particularly for staff. And all of the things that anyone would need to be able to rejuvenate themselves, during their breaks in the day was there. So as I talk about priority number 2, I have to say that I feel confident, and I want our community to feel confident because I had a chance to see it. Our community of staff members are really instituting priority number 2, creating well-being spaces for students and staff in a real way that I've never seen before. And I credit them for doing that work because I also see the benefit in many of our students. I mean, as you know, we walk through and talk with our students, how are you feeling? You know, they're feeling good, and they talk about the different options that are available to them to be able to have those breaks. And again, that looks very different from the kindergartner to the senior. Which is why I applaud the staff, because, you know, what I'm hearing from students is many of the ideas that they've shared about what they need and what will help them in these spaces, they actually see us implementing. And so I believe for us to continue to achieve priority number 1, which is re-engaging and rebuilding trust, it is doing just that, taking the feedback that we're getting and operationalize it in a meaningful way. Now, does that mean there's a long way to go? Always, because it is about a continuous improvement for us. But I have to say that we've gotten off to a great start. And I'm incredibly grateful to the staff in our schools for really operationalizing priority number 2 in that way and truly making it come alive. So as we talk about the beginning of the school year, I'll start with, I do have to say Rockville High School. We were there very, very early in the morning. Those of you who couldn't be there with us in person, I'm sure you saw us on the news in the dark. Starting out at Rockville High School on the first day of school. But I had a chance to see teachers in every classroom, and I'm going to say even including in our discrete programs, really making, as it should be, a very conscious effort to ensure that there was an emphasis on relationship building and that relationship building was going to be the foundation for how students were starting the year to be able to excel academically. We were at Burtonsville Elementary, and I had a chance to see, and those of you, we were there together, a teacher who was implementing Leader in Me curriculum. Now, we've talked about that curriculum a lot at this table. You know, we've heard about some of the successes of it and hearing advocacy for it, and we've heard about some of the challenges of it. And we've been addressing some of those challenges, and we'll continue to do it. But that teacher, I'll never forget that, you know, she had the activity where students were really thinking about attributes that described what made a person a good human being, a good leader, and they had to make a decision about a statement that she gave and decide if they were going to go to the left side of the room or the right side of the room. And this, I believe, were second graders. I know they were little, or our smaller students. But just the energy and the amount of pride that we saw them feel with making choices about what kind of individual do I want to be here at school and outside of school, and how does that relate to my choices, that teacher made that come alive. And I just kept thinking as I reflected on that lesson, when we begin those conversations with our students in kindergarten, first, second, third grade, then some of the challenges that we're facing or we have to help work through as they grow older become less challenging because we're spending that time building that foundation. So I said I'll stop there, only 2 examples, but I shared one from Rockville High School and Burtonsville Elementary because they stuck with me around the importance of well-being and the job that our staff is doing in the classroom and around the school to do it. Not even to mention the bulletin boards. I've never seen bulletin boards the way that I've seen them this year, really just reaffirming everything that a student could possibly ever have a doubt with. So today I'm excited to bring the team to the table. We have our Office of School Support and Wellbeing here, really prepared to talk about how we've operationalized some of that from a central level and how we're supporting the success of our schools, not just beginning this year this way, but making sure this is an effort every single day, because that's what it's going to take for us to continue to recover from the impact of what we've experienced over the past few years as a result of COVID-19. And I mentioned DHHS being so much a partner with us in this because we recognize that this work is about us having a tiered wraparound support structure for our students. And I will always say that that's not work, or it shouldn't be work that we do alone, but we become very successful with that when we do that in partnership. So again, I want to thank them for being here today. And I want to say, team, why don't we come on down so we can get in the presentation, because if you don't, I will continue to talk about the excitement of what we've seen our students and staff do in our schools the first week.
Dr. McKnight, while the team's coming down, I do have a question.
Sure.
So I've noticed too some of the really great wellness, well-being spaces, whether you call it a calm room or a chill space or a Zen den, whatever. I've heard from some students in various schools across the county who haven't seen those spaces or have said the ones they see are not as inviting as some others. And I'm wondering if we can dedicate a web page that shows some really great examples of some of these Zen den spaces.
Yes.
Because if you're like me, you spontaneously aren't going to have great ideas about how to make something, but when you see it reflected in others, you're like, oh, that's a great idea. And then if schools are wondering or students are wondering if there's facility support, maybe to get some of the accoutrements that you're seeing in some of those rooms, if we could make sure that people know that that our facilities team can help support them in obtaining some of the things they might want to put in there, because there are amazing spaces like that, absolutely amazing.
Ms. Harris, thank you so much for that recommendation. I'm not sure if Ms. Fisher's in the room from communications, but we did capture actually a lot of great pictures and videos, and Mr. Gersey as well, over opening week. So yes, we're happy, and I think that's a great idea to be able to share that and upload some of those examples. And it looks like the team's prepared to talk a little bit about some of the things that they're already doing with that today. But thank you so much for sharing that thought and idea. All right, so I think at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Mattaleone.
Thank you so much, Dr. McKnight, and greetings to the Board of Education, President Wolf, Vice President Silvestre, and all the members of the board, and Ms. Mondrowski at home. I'm Damon Monteleone, Associate Superintendent of Wellbeing, Learning, and Achievement in the Office of School Support and Wellbeing, and it is an honor and privilege to sit before you today to share our vision, the innovative steps we've taken, and the enhanced structures and processes that School Support and Wellbeing has developed in support of student mental health and well-being. Could you go to the next slide, please? So we'll begin today by framing our work with the strategic priorities before digging into some of the innovative steps that we've taken to undergird our comprehensive wellness services and support infrastructure. We're also happy to highlight some best practices that are happening at Quince Orchard, and I happen to see Ms. Thomas, Principal Thomas, coming into the room. And we will end with an update on the Wellness Center expansion with our partner, Dr. Kapunen, the Chief Medical Officer. Next slide, please. So again, we'll begin with aligning all of our work and our vision to the district priorities. Next slide, please. So we absolutely believe, and I think as Dr. McKnight alluded to, that student wellness is the #1 issue facing public education today. And so we must approach this from a whole child, whole school, and frankly, a whole district perspective. And we have taken key steps to do just that. And this requires a paradigm shift in our approach to not just wellness, but to teaching and learning and how we foster our entire school environment. Equity and well-being and quality front-end instruction can no longer be seen as separate entities that are entering the schoolhouse on their own. They must really be intertwined at their roots and manifested and visible in classrooms and learning spaces each and every day, because our students spend 90% or more of their lives in those classrooms. And so we must shift our approach from wellness, from one that has largely been focused on crisis response or retroactive support, to one where we are proactively fostering these learning environments that are centered around equity and well-being, because we know that wellness is a precondition to teaching and learning and to quality instruction and for students to maximize their potential. And we know that not all students will be well if those spaces are not anchored right around equity and anti-racism. So to this end, we are driven by a belief that our schools must be sanctuaries of wellness for our students. So in order to do so, we must acknowledge and examine all of the conditions that our students face outside of school that are outside of our control, and the stressors and some of the traumas that they've experienced over the last several years, due to many things that we've seen and we continue to see on our phone feeds and the nightly newscasts. We must mitigate these, but more importantly, we must accept that schools have also caused stress. Schools have also caused anxiety, and then take a critical lens to everything we do inside our schoolhouses. And so while all of our work is driven through the strategic plan, because we are centered on wellness and well-being and family engagement, we believe that that wellness priority is the fundamental building block that cuts across the other two. And once that is established and laid, it paves the way for academic excellence and for high-quality teaching to learn if our staff and students are well. And additionally, it paves the way for that key professional development and that operational excellence. Specifically, under well-being and family engagement, we are driven by promoting that caretive and supportive climate by implementing those school-level practices to support effective behavioral health management systems and implementing these culturally responsive family engagement that promotes the two-way communication. Specifically, under professional and operational excellence, you'll hear today how we are increasing professional learning for all staff that is driven by equity and that supports students' social emotional trauma. We've redesigned our space specifically around that priority. And then clearly, we believe that through focusing on wellness, we improve student academic outcomes. Next slide, please. So while we are highlighting some key innovative steps that we've taken, it is important to remember our overall approach to wellness in the district. It is a multi-pronged approach. First and foremost, we align the resources that we have here within the district and that are centered in our schools and in partnership with HHS, and we're happy that they're with us today. We proactively develop the infrastructure so schools are equipped to create these conditions of well-being, and nice to hear that these were visible when you went out to schools last week. And then we respond in a comprehensive manner to an array of needs from those students. But additionally, the Office of School Support and Well-being has been structured so that our central office staff, the directors and the associates that support schools directly, the learning and achievement specialists, the social workers, the psychologists, the counselors, are all aligned horizontally so that our work is tight and it is coherent as it enters the schoolhouse in a unified way. So last spring, we came before you, the Board of Education, and shared some key innovative school practices that we were hoping to bring to scale this year. And we talked about going out to schools and surfacing those best practices and talking to counselors and psychologists and folks in our well-being spaces in schools. And so we followed through with that. And we developed a Canvas page that's easily accessible for school leaders with a bank of resources that are grouped by these successful school-based practices. And we believe that we will continue to see these brought to scale. Some of these include, as you said, dedicating physical environments for wellness in each and every school, whether it's a space in an elementary classroom, a mindfulness space in middle school, or at the high school level. Creating that dedicated time for wellness embedded into the student's schedule, whether that's advisory at the high school level, in middle school, in a variety of ways at the elementary level. And then finally, developing a norm process for all of our staff to provide tiered support, right? That first tier for all students, the second tier that's a bit more focused for some students, and that third tier, right, where we have students of high needs. And one of the other key pieces that we really engaged in last year, and we know that our schools are doing, is getting with their teachers and their students and their stakeholders to get that street level data and ask those questions and use the responses to develop their resources and their structure. In addition to this Canvas page, which we do believe will be a digital commons for elevating innovative practices moving forward, we engaged all 209 schools last year, now 210, in a district-level student wellness survey. Because it was important to us coming out of the tragic year that we had last year to really be able to get a district-level landscape, a shot of what our students are telling us about their current state, and to be able to give that data to schools so they could use their individual school data to drive their wellness goals within their school improvement plan. Again, back to that coherence. And so one other piece that's not visible on the slide is the incredible work of our restorative justice specialists. Thank you. We have increased our staff from 3 to 9, right, to really support all of our schools. And we continue to engage with behavior intervention support, building those proactive practices, engaging in mediation, conflict resolution, as we decrease the variability of this work across schools. And finally, which you'll hear about soon from our supervisor of learning and achievement, we really are focusing on that classroom experience for students to ensure that those classrooms are rooted in equity and well-being. And you'll hear about some of the professional development going on around that in a moment. Next slide, please. So just to touch upon some of the data that I referenced earlier, we wanted to pull, you have this, I believe, in your packet, but we wanted to pull some key data out of this and share it here at the table. So first, you're looking at elementary school data. And essentially they were asked, which of these areas do you need support with? And so at the elementary level, there are clear implications that are driving our work, specifically around self-esteem, stress, problem solving, and expressing emotions. Next slide, please. At the middle school level, our students really circled our attention on the communication skills, feeling connected to school through extracurricular activities, right, which makes sense after being out for so long. Again, back to that self-esteem and that stress. And I think these are two important themes that we'll see at each of our levels. Next slide, please. And then here at the high school level, our students shared they needed more help. Again, self-esteem, communication, feeling depressed and feeling overwhelmed by really the academic environments that they were once again thrust into. And so through our key collaboration with the school supervisory directors and associates, we know that they are supporting our principals to use this school-specific data to inform those wellness goals in their school improvement plans. And we can't wait to continue to partner with them there. Next slide, please. So in a moment, you will hear more about our social worker implementation. We're really excited about that. But it is important to highlight a few other pieces of some of the innovative steps that we've taken. We heard a lot here at the table last year about the need to increase our direct services to students, right? Our direct services around mental health and well-being, be it through our social workers, our counselors, and our psychologists. So as discussed in prior board meetings, the funding has been allocated, thank you, to provide additional in-person and telehealth mental health services for our schools. So specifically, as we're referring to our telehealth services, these are designed to provide support at the elementary and middle schools that are not already receiving additional external mental health support through linkages or some of our other supports from Health and Human Services. So we hope to bring this RFP before the board on September 22nd for final approval there. And then finally, we've shifted our approach to student well-being teams. They continue to evolve as a leading collaborative body in our schools to address a variety of needs faced by our students. So in this upcoming school year, those teams are evolving to be a referral source for our social workers at the high school level, to be able to essentially figure out which degree of intervention is appropriate for students and who that person may be, whether it's somebody from HHS in the wellness center space or some of our internal staff. We will monitor the progress of our homeless students through our student well-being teams and really engage much more closely with our emerging multilingual transition counselors and our international enrollment office to support the transition for our newcomers into our schoolhouses. We see this as key. Next slide, please. We often talk about data and how that drives our work from a data-driven position, but also how we can hold ourselves accountable and see the success of the implementation of the programs that we have been taking. And so in the past, we've come to the table and we've shared that we can tell you how many students we're seeing, we can tell you why we're seeing them, and what the issue is. Where we have needed to really upgrade our work to a certain extent is around that data monitoring in a longitudinal fashion. So once we see the student, what intervention are we providing? How effective is that intervention, right? If it's an attendance intervention, are we tracking to see if the student's attendance increases? If a student is seeing a social worker for stress or anxiety, do we know that stress or anxiety level, right, has gone down at the end, and how are we tracking that? So we have been blessed, frankly, to partner with our friends in technology to develop a multi-tiered system of support data platform, or MTSS platform, which is using data to identify students who are in need of both academic and behavioral interventions, but we'll focus on the behavioral and mental health side today. And it is based on that three-tiered model that I spoke to earlier. But data is collected at each tier, right, to see who needs these interventions. We have a progress monitoring tool, which is going to allow us to see which of the interventions are used, and then we are able to track to see the success of these interventions. This tool is going to be used by a variety of wellness professionals. This is for whether it's behavioral threat assessment, suicide risk assessment, counseling, just mental health services in general that are provided. And this is a tool that can be used by social workers, by our PPWs, by our counselors, by all of our folks who see students, so that we have one platform for this data. We are embedding that right into our processes and launching professional development as we speak. It's brand new, and we're sharing it with you today. So we're really excited about that tool. And I am going to pass it over to my colleague, Ms. Catherine Breuer, who is the supervisor of learning and achievement, to speak about the professional development work we've done with our learning and achievement specialists.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Dr. McKnight and members of the Board of Education. As Mr. Monteleone shared, I'm Catherine Breuer, and I have the honor and privilege of supporting our learning and achievement specialist within the Office of School Support and Wellbeing. As part of our work to ensure equitable teaching and learning practices in each and every classroom, the Office of School Support and Wellbeing has made steps to ensure that well-being lies at the center of instruction, as we know that students cannot learn when they are not well. So our staff must be mindful of our students' needs to be cared for, to feel affirmed, and to be welcomed each and every day. And that should be reflected in the learning environment. The 26 learning and achievement specialists in our office particularly work side by side with school leaders in our schools, particularly our staff development teachers, in making connections between well-being, equity, and instruction. And we first started this work by strengthening our own learning. So our specialists have engaged in shared learning around the text. Oh, next slide, please. I'm sorry. Have engaged in shared learning around the text Equity-Centered at Trauma-Informed Education by Alex Binet, and received a 3-part workshop by the author herself in the spring to really deepen our understanding of trauma and its effects in our schools. And really examine the policies, practices, and beliefs that communicate unconditional positive regard to each and every student, meaning our students and staff are cared for, they have value, and they don't have to prove it to anyone. Communicating these messages explicitly demonstrates a commitment to our students and our staff well-being and their need to feel cared for, welcomed, and affirmed each and every day. We have also engaged our staff development teachers in developing a common understanding of equity-centered practices in our schools. So this past spring, our staff development teachers engaged in learning on equity-centered trauma-informed practices, including clarifying definitions of trauma, evaluating the current state of their school's trauma-based practices, and brainstorming school-wide classroom-based approaches to becoming more equity-centered. This summer, we reached 84% of our staff development teachers, 182 staff development teachers, for an in-person day of learning to kick off our learning for the year. Staff development teachers strengthened their understanding of trauma-informed practices and pedagogy and examined the role certain data plays in empowering and humanizing our students. 98% of participants rated the day of learning at the highest levels, with the SDTs eager to bring their learning back to the schools to implement. Our learning and achievement specialists are integral in ensuring the SDTs have the support they need to go from learning to doing, and ensuring that well-being is something that is communicated and shared as a staff, with the staff engaging in that learning. So our LASs provide job-embedded coaching to support schools in a myriad of ways, including analyzing well-being data, observing classroom instruction with the staff development teachers to collect baseline data, and ensuring that our professional learning plans are designed around supporting staff based on the needs of the students and really focused on how we are applying the learning, again, making sure we're going from learning to doing. And so these are just some of the ways that our learning and achievement specialists really support schools to operationalize their school improvement plans and support schools in viewing student well-being as an essential prerequisite for academic achievement. I'll now turn it over to Ms. Stephanie Wallace, who will discuss the important role our social workers play.
Good afternoon, President Wolf, Dr. McKnight, and all of the members of the board. I'm Stephanie Wallace, and I'm the supervisor of our well-being social workers, and I'm here to talk with you about our amazing team. Next slide, please. I'm very pleased to report that every high school is staffed with a full-time well-being social worker to serve all students. Additionally, we have 6 central office social workers who not only provide direct services to identified elementary and middle schools, but also work alongside our restorative justice instructional specialists to provide consultative services to the remaining schools within their clusters. Finally, to ensure a fluid career track, we have recently onboarded 15 social work interns from our partnership with the University of Maryland. All of our social workers have engaged in intense training this summer to prepare them to provide the highest level of support for our students. I'm excited to report that the social workers' professional learning will continue throughout this year via our weekly PLCs. In addition to the ongoing collaboration with Restorative Justice, we have partnered with the social workers within the Office of Special Education to create monthly shared learning opportunities. Additionally, we had one of our learning achievement specialists assist us in creating our mission and vision. I'd like to share that I'm most proud of the efforts that each of our social workers has made to support all of our students. Dr. McKnight, you referenced your school visits earlier today, and you and President Wolf both had the opportunity to visit Clarksburg High School, and you met with Lakeisha Shears. She is one of our well-being social workers. And as you saw, she has made her space welcoming and inviting for all students. She is a collaborator, problem solver, and is visible within the school, both in the halls as well as making classroom visits. This has allowed her to connect with many students in just a few short days. Ms. Shears is only one example of our excellence, and I welcome you to visit any of our schools. I'm confident that you will find the same level of commitment to all of our students and families from every single one of our team members. I'd like to close out by sharing with you how we document our work. During the summer, our entire team worked very hard to create our procedures and practices to effectively implement our supports. One of our many work groups developed a normed referral process and form, which has a high emphasis on utilizing each school's well-being team to filter and process referrals. Additionally, social workers have been trained on utilizing Synergy and MTSS to develop treatment plans and document session attendance as well as progress. You heard Ms. Rubin reference this work in the opening of school's presentation, that providing support in a meaningful way will not only yield a continued investment in our students, but can also impact academic outcomes. We truly appreciate your interest in learning more about our well-being social workers, and we're extremely grateful for your investment and allocation of funds for this additional support to exist. I would like to emphasize the importance of us continuing this critical work following the ending of ESSER funding. This work and the support of our students is crucial, and we hope that our team of well-being social workers will continue to be funded long after ESSER funding has left MCPS. Finally, before we hear from Mr. Emby, the Director of Student Engagement, Behavioral Health and Academics, who will provide a comprehensive overview of all of our well-being supports, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge and ask all of our social workers and interns to please stand who are in this room. I would like to recognize you. Thank you, Mr. Emby.
Good afternoon. So you've just heard from Ms. Wallace about the integration of social workers as the newer members of our well-being team. I have to say that there will always be learnings, there will always be growths, there will always be adjustments as we implement the previous with the new.
Can we have the next slide, please? I'm sorry.
Oh, thank you. And I think that's really important to just recognize that we're at the start of a journey. In staff development, that's always an important piece because who we will become is not who we are right this second. So always a work in progress, but I want to thank everyone for their dedication. One thing that is important to us is the alignment as well with our community partner supports because we recognize that as essential. We know that it is important to service our students without duplicating our efforts. We have to maximize our resources. You'll hear from Dr. Kapunen later about, and some of our partners from the Department of Health and Human Services. But for now, I'd like to highlight a few key initiatives about our support from the lens of MTSS, as described earlier by Mr. Monteleone. As you can see from the graphic above, Tier 1 supports are universal. Tier 1 supports are for all students that they do not have to request. It is the foundation. It's something that is given to everyone. Those may include examples such as the SEL curriculum lessons, whether that's through Leader in Me, Nearpod, or even some of our local school initiatives. That includes equity-based trauma-informed learning environments, as described earlier, and also includes support within the community, including community circles and restorative justice circles. At level 2, support becomes more specific. Our student well-being team remains the core vehicle of identification for the distribution of student support. So that is really important when we talk about how our partners support, how we support, who does what. The core vehicle for the identification of that support remains the well-being team. Teachers, parents, and students may refer students to the well-being team for support. All referrals will start with the well-being team, and they will determine whether the support will be serviced locally at the school level or referred to our HHS partners or other avenues of care. Tier 2 supports include supports both from MCPS as well as our partners. They may include mental health or well-being groups, the use of our emergent multilingual learner therapeutic counselors. I am proud of getting that right. Check-ins and check-outs, and also mentoring services. Our HHS partners will provide support and wonderful support that they already do at the Tier 2 level, including support through newly highlighted roles, such as the Positive Youth Development Specialist, the HHS Care Manager, and School Outreach Network staff. Tier 3 support, of course, is our most intensive level of support. They will include direct counseling and therapeutic services, both locally and with our partners. I want to talk about one example of a well-being team. Of course, we have 210 well-being teams, but today we'd like to highlight Quince Orchard High School. So under the leadership of Ms. Beth Thomas, Quince Orchard's principal, student well-being has been the center of staff priorities.
Can we have the next slide? I'm sorry.
Sorry,
We
next
need to move
slide.
it on.
As they deal with conditions
Next slide.
that impact the larger community and society, including stress, trauma, anxiety, and of course, you've heard earlier, self-esteem, they have implemented many school-level practices designed to promote a positive and caring, supportive school climate. They remain ready to respond to crisis and trauma situations, and they have also developed proactive strategies that focus on equity and well-being. Next slide. The student well-being team continues to thrive and grow at QO under the leadership of the school psychologist, Jean McCormack, and Jean's here with us today as well. Team members start meetings with mindfulness considerations for staff members and continue with the discussion of student and family needs, which often include the sharing of community resources. Led by Ms. McCormack, the Our Minds Matter Club, which is MCPS's flagship, continues to support the mental health needs of students and to destigmatize the seeking of support around mental health and wellness. OMM clubs are important as they are peer-led clubs that are expanding throughout the county. Professional learning for staff and culturally responsive family engagement are cornerstones to ensure that new and proactive wellness initiatives are understood, supported, and implemented with fidelity. Restorative justice practices at Quince Orchard High School have become an effective alternative to disciplinary practices that used to be more exclusionary in nature. I'm going to introduce for you a video. Please take a few moments to enjoy a video about Quince Orchard High School and the members of their well-being team and how they contribute to the overall wellness of staff and students.
At Quince Orchard High School, we truly believe that mental health and well-being is a priority. For our students and staff to be well, we must all be well. And so we have structures, processes, and interventions in place to help students be their best, and we're excited to share them with you.
We are going to do our first team building exercise. The challenge, though, is we're not going to be talking.
Cougars Connect is a point in our schedule where students meet once a week with their teachers. They have the opportunity to learn socio-emotional learning, skills and strategies, along with team building activities, along with relationship building. We also use Leader in Me as a tool to support it. It gives us the opportunity to combine life skills to support academic skills, which supports the success of the whole student.
Next month is Mental Health Awareness Month, and we love doing all of those activities.
Cougar Minds Matter is a student-led club that holds meetings where they discuss mental well-being and coping skills, as well as do school-wide campaigns, including handing out green ribbons, bringing therapy dogs, and our Move for Mental Health Staff for Student volleyball game. They are truly advocates for mental well-being and are incredible students to have here at QO.
We could get the link or a summary of what services individual agencies provide.
Our student well-being team supports students who struggle with academics, attendance, or socio-emotionally. It's a tiered approach. Tier 1 and Tier 2 teachers are responsible for. Tier 3, our multidisciplinary teams then put plans and interventions in place to ensure that the students are successful.
UL 365 is a committee of staff who look to infuse mental wellness into the student and staff experience at QO. We developed a student mindfulness room and staff wellness lounge. We provide monthly wellness tips and lead weekly mindfulness and yoga practices. We have been around for a few years and every year come up with new ideas and activities, and I'm very excited to see what we have in store this year.
Restorative justice work requires us to engage in building relationships, in problem solving and collaboration, in repairing harm, resolving conflict whenever it occurs. We established our framework, and we also made a commitment to being anti-racist and anti-bias. We continue in year 2 by building our capacity of all staff to engage in restorative work.
My role will be to help students and provide that mental health support and also advocate for social issues. And I will be part of the student well-being team, so I will now be looking forward to working with all members and help students engage in learning and thrive this school year.
We're really excited about all the supports and interventions that we've put into place here at Quince Orchard High School. We know as a result of our well-being student survey that students are feeling connected, our staff feels connected, and this year our theme is Paradigm Shift 2.0. We are going to shine the light on what we're doing well and what needs to be improved.
Our wellness efforts continue to be supported by our wonderful colleagues in Health and Human Services, and certainly with our new Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Kapunen, and we are happy to welcome her and bring her to the table to share her work.
I have Mr. Hodge and Mr. Cordero with me as well.
Yeah.
Dr. McKnight, President Wolf, members of the Board of Education. Great to see you today. I am here, I'm so excited to be able to share this work in partnership with the Department of Health and Human Services with you today and with our community, including our newest social workers. Today I have with me Mark Hodge, the Senior Administrator for School Health Services for Montgomery County Department of Health and Human Services, and Mr. Luis Cardona, the Administrator for Positive Youth Development. I will start by saying that as a physician, one of my best roles has been to be a school-based health physician, and I can't overstate the significance and importance of health services being in the schools, where child-serving, child-facing professionals can all work together on the behalf of students. And school health services specifically play a very key role in that comprehensive system that you just heard well described, with many layers of support, many layers of prevention and intervention for student mental health. Next slide. And I'll hand it over to Mr. Hodge.
Good afternoon. The Wellness Center program expansion is in addition to the 6 wellness centers that we already have at 6 different high schools across the county. Board President Wolf and Dr. McKnight visited one of those last week at Wheaton High School, and it's a very comprehensive set of services that are provided there, including somatic health services where students can receive primary care due to their status of being uninsured, or because they're through the Care for Kids program that the county runs, or just because they're sick and in school and may need to have a sick visit or even a well child visit while they're there in the school. In addition to that, there are positive youth development and mental health services that are provided at all of the 6 wellness centers. In addition to that, the expansion that we're talking about today will then expand the services to 19 additional high schools. Just the enhanced mental health services that we're affectionately terming the Bridges to Wellness as a bridge from where we are now with enhanced mental health services to our full-fledged wellness center that will have the comprehensive services in once they're all built over the next few years.
And then I'll also remind everyone that this relationship building, working together, collaboration, and expansion of mental health supports, especially mental health prevention, is consistent with our shared commitment to restorative practices and social justice. Next slide, please. So the new wellness spaces will be occupied by these new staff types. Mental health clinician and a care management professional will be present 5 days a week, as well as a youth development specialist for each of the high schools. And then 2 days a week, there will be representation from staff from the School Outreach Network through DHHS Positive Youth Development.
So we can talk about the logistics. So yeah, just like our traditional wellness centers, part of this Bridges effort is going to ensure that we provide a very seamless process in terms of how students are going to access these services, in particular working directly through the school social workers to ensure that there's adequate referrals to whether it's the behavioral health practitioners, the case managers, the positive youth development specialists, or school outreach network staff.
Next slide, please. Oops, sorry, next slide, please. So originally, 10 schools were identified as priority schools for mental health service expansion. However, it became very clear that expanding services at all high schools was critical to addressing students' needs. And this includes the 6 high schools that already have comprehensive services in place that will receive augmented mental health services. Next slide. And this demonstrates just some of the logistic planning and coordination, space planning for interim services, and facilities improvements have already been completed in the first arrow. After that, interim phase implementation of mental health services is our ongoing effort to make sure that these services are in place as soon as possible. And then simultaneously, continuing planning and needs assessments for the full wellness center spaces and build-outs will be ongoing. Next slide, please.
So as you can see, in particular with the somatic health services, these are the schools that you see in the chart that already have somatic health services and currently have proposed expansion of behavioral health supports. As of, I believe, yesterday, all the positive youth development staff are on board, from our vendors that are providing the positive youth development specialists, and we've already begun the process of, through the School Outreach Network, to connect with those folks as well. When it gets down to the proposed expansion, as you can see, those are the schools that again, are in the process of getting the behavioral health staff, as well as some of the other supports that are a part of this Bridges to Wellness initiative.
Next slide, please.
And so, and again, with the expansion of Bridges, you can see that there are now 4 different vendors to include Every Mind, YMCA, Shepherd Pratt, and Identity, who are providing the positive youth development specialists.
Next slide, please. Just a quick facility updates. Facilities is near completion of all 19 wellness spaces at the high schools without existing services, with contractors just doing last-minute punch list corrections as final inspections occur this week. Next slide. So in summary, 19 high schools will receive new wellness space and staff as a bridge to the comprehensive wellness centers to more promptly meet social and emotional well-being needs of students in this academic year. The 6 schools that have established wellness centers will receive augmented mental health resources. And key to this work is the addition and expansion of Tier 2 level supports for secondary prevention and early intervention, early mental health intervention in the form of youth development specialists and school outreach network staff. Next slide. Thank you for allowing us to give this update and share this information today. We'll now turn it over to the board for discussion and questions.
Thank you very much. That's very comprehensive. I have 2 questions. The wellness centers, I know that they have basically been completed, but can you talk a little bit about staffing? I know we haven't staffed them all yet, and where we are in that process.
So as of today, just over half of the Bridges to Wellness spaces have hired staff. They're currently placing them and working with them to train them now. We expect that by October, all of the sites, all 19 sites, plus the additional staff that we're providing in the existing wellness centers will be fully staffed by October.
And my other question is, and I don't know how to put this, so I'm going to just kind of say it. You know, now that we have a whole wellness staff, and then we have HHS in our buildings also, is there some sort of agreement between you as to the division of labor? How is that working, and what does that look like?
I'll feel that and start it off. So as you know, as we've really just engaged in deep partnering across all 25 high schools, our folks have met, and one of the things that we are utilizing that student well-being team for, right? So when there is a reference, be it from a teacher who services something or a counselor or whomever it may be, that a student may be in need, and that case or that student's would go before the student well-being team and then say, is this a case for our HHS partners in the wellness space. Is this somebody that we're going to seek additional external services? What level of support does the parent have? So we see that as a space where we can really align those resources to ensure that kids aren't getting bounced back and forth and that we are not duplicating our work. So we've developed kind of a process flow for that.
Yeah, that's, you hit the nail on the head. Are they getting bounced between the two? That's what I was trying to understand. So thank you for that. Dr. Joftis.
Thank you, Ms. Wolf. Unbelievable. Thank you. It's such a thoughtful, comprehensive, data-driven approach. And this is one of the reasons I love being a board member here is I feel like we tackle big problems in a really thoughtful and comprehensive way. I agree with Dr. McKnight and Ms. Wolf. I had a chance to see some schools, and the work that you all are doing is already really evident. I feel like many of the things we do here can be national models and often aren't. And so that's kind of what I want to focus on. That's where I would like to push us is sort of how do we take what is a wonderful use of resources, leadership by all of you and Dr. McKnight, and make it so that this really can be a national model. As you all know, every single district now in the country is working on this and challenged by it. It's a national problem. So I just a couple comments and questions that might help think about that. So one is I would really encourage us, one of the schools I visited last week had a community school model as approach to that. And I think we need to, when we're talking about wellness, I think that's a huge part of our wellness work. They were telling me some of the work they were doing, and I think that has to be considered part of our wellness, overall wellness solution. But it also raised a question, which was, I think they said that they have the capacity to serve 8 students basically in tier 3. And I said, I'm assuming that's not all the students you have in tier 3, right? And they're like, no. So that's certainly one issue, right? Is how do we make sure that we're deploying resources in a way that is addressing certainly the tier 3 needs that are present across the system. And I think we heard, like, over the last year or two, one of the issues around that is that we know counselors, and I'm assuming social workers now as well, their caseloads are really challenged, right? That they're serving a lot of kids. There were some shortages. It seems like we're mostly there in addressing the shortages, certainly from the social work standpoint. But maybe rethinking the positions as well, certainly around the counselor role, to make sure that they can do what the intention of what that role is, and just thinking about how do we help schools accomplish all the things that we ask them to do, and realizing that this is a priority, and so counselors being pulled, for example, into test prep test administration and paperwork around 504s, et cetera, are minimized. The other question, I guess, this is more of a question around the work with the MTSS. Is there a coordinator at each school, or so I was thinking about the great work with IT in terms of coming up with the dashboard and how that data is going to get used. Is there a single person, sort of a point person at each school who's responsible for ensuring data input and quality and coordination of tiers? I guess all 3 tiers. I was thinking especially tiers 2 and 3. Is there someone at each school who leads that work?
Right. So the different wellness teams are led by different people. The schools get to decide. So in some schools, most schools, it's the resource counselor. However, at QO, you can see that it's school psychologist. In one school that I know of, it'll be the social worker. Thanks for stepping up. One thing that I'm really proud of.
Is that a school decision?
It's a school-to-school decision.
Okay.
One thing that I'm really proud of is the funding from the Board of Education to support this. So not just supported in the initiatives that we just spoke about, but also in stipending. So there is a $2,000 stipend for a wellness coordinator, because those teams, we've realized there's a lot of extra work, a lot of layered work with the person leading that team.
Yes.
So a coordinator position. There's also a $1,000 stipend for specific data input.
Okay.
So in past days, how we had the Edline super user or the gradebook super user that would coach the rest of the team,
Yeah.
there is a stipend there for someone to be able to become kind of the point person
Yeah.
for that new system. And we are acknowledging at this table that it is new. I can't say it enough.
Yes, no, I understand.
That we're just building it up. So
Yeah.
implementation is going to be critical.
Yeah, great.
So those stipends are a part of what was agreed to in the budget.
I can't thank you enough for that, because, I've seen so many schools try to implement approaches like this, certainly through community schools, who don't have a coordinator assigned at the school level, and they typically, as you can imagine, aren't very successful. So if we don't have sort of that dedicated person who could be thinking about coordinated resources, I'm really happy to be thinking about that. And then my last point, and then I will be quiet, is you've already started this process, Mr. Mentaloni, you sort of mentioned this in your presentation, just this data-driven approach, which I'm so appreciative of, and just making sure that as we get some experience, at least with a lot of these efforts, that we've got not just the outcome data, you've heard me talk a lot about this, but that we're also being really thoughtful about particular indicators of the implementation. So for example, I was struck by the Quince Orchard student well-being team. Is that an expectation across every school? Is that sort of a look for that we see an SWBT in place, that they're meeting consistently, that there's sort of a clear approach that they have, and that we can build on some of those look-fors, I guess, going forward?
Yeah, I can just speak to that last question about the student well-being teams. They are, as we've heard, right, they have a variety of folks that are on the team that represent each of the offices, or the departments rather, in school support and well-being. And so we did communicate to the schools, right, when we shared last week that these stipends will be coming, and made some recommendations about centering it there on the student well-being teams. But through Steve Neff's office and our pupil personnel workers, who also sit on these teams, our pupil personnel workers, and Steve Neff coordinates the work of the student well-being teams from the district level, and he has, I believe, bi-weekly PLCs with his PPWs, where they elevate their best practices, they share problems of practice, they look at what's happening in each of the different schools and spaces, and then recalibrate their approach and bring it back down to school. So we do have an operating structure behind it. But again, like when these were first created, it was during the pandemic to literally find students that weren't in school. So this is a wonderful model, and we continue to be iterative in our Plan, Do, Study, Act, and expanding services for students as we can through that space.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So you brought up a couple of things in relation to that coordination piece, and I just wanted to acknowledge Hope McGuire, because I think she's done a real good job, at least in helping to facilitate that process for us. I don't want to say outsiders. Most you already know my staff has been in several of your schools for years now, but it's an external resource to your schools. So I'm really excited about that, but I also wanted to add that even on the HHS part, and we're currently in the process of filling that position, there is a coordinator, a program manager that is assigned to support this in my shop as well, specifically for the PYD pieces. So that's in the future, that'll help to support and enhance what we're doing as well. Yeah.
I want to follow up on something that Dr. Joftis asked. On the data collection, and you have a team in the school, how often is the data being reviewed? I mean, if you need to make adjustments, how often is the data being reviewed by somebody?
Are you talking about with the process, the initial process?
I'm just talking about the
with
data
the social workers?
platform.
MTSS.
The data platform. You said there's one platform for data, and you're collecting data on which interventions were used and the success. I'm just trying to figure out is somebody monitoring that closely so that you know whether or not there need to be adjustments, even in the data you collect?
So they will be. This is literally brand new.
Yeah,
and
I
was
understand that.
completed over in July. But that would be, this hub is the hub for all of our student well-being members coming together and using that, right? So you have that team is represented by, our social workers, as we've heard, our counselors, our psychologists, variety of people that are on that team, and so they'll be using that database. But again, I just want to really reiterate that it was just developed, and we are beginning our training with folks right now. But it's going to be built out.
And it's not single use. So you don't just put a student in and then they're in the sheet, the goal is set, the number of weeks is determined. There are follow-up points. So there's a point that you go in after week 1, attended, not attended, okay? They attended a session with the social worker. And they have a simple system, it's 0 through 4, and it's like made no progress, no change, did they make progress? So there's a monitoring system that is ongoing because we know that students will be in different places with that. I want to say also that at the central level, I know that Hope and Stephanie, who were both referenced today, work together to review that data, whether it is through MTSS or whether it's through the social worker tools that Stephanie uses to review what social workers or who they're working with. So there's a process for continuous monitoring. We don't know what it'll look like yet. We don't know how effective it will be, but that's a part of the conversation.
Thank you for that. That's very helpful. Ms. Silvestri. I'm sorry, did you want to?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Good afternoon. I thank you for the opportunity to share the work happening at Quince Orchard, and thank you for your support. It has made a huge difference. And I want to be honest in saying that we've been learning to dance, and that's the term that you'll hear at Quince Orchard probably a lot, because as we just went through our second student wellbeing team meeting 2 days ago, we talked a lot about the different levels of tiers and the collaboration of resources and collaboration of supports. And what was amazing, and I actually was texting our school psychologists and social workers as I was sitting here, as I heard you speak today, I felt like the story of Quince Orchard was just being unfolded, because we are constantly going back and looking at the data to see what is making a difference for students. How are we purposefully finding resources, following up, and we have a 4 to 6 week cycle that we go back in and we look at every single student that's been referred to the wellbeing team. We look at the tiers and the levels of interventions. We look at what worked and what we need to do differently, and then we follow up and we have a conversation. Does this need to go to either our friends in Shepherd Pratt, or the Bridge to Wellness, and our collaboration with Identity, or is this something that this stays with our in-house social worker, or is it something that the counselors can be a further support for? So I just wanted to share, because I think a lot of what is happening is our continuation, but the data speaks for itself. It is making a difference for students.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sorry, just one follow-up. Sorry, Ms. Silvestri. So that's awesome. And, that's the sort of mindset and culture that I feel like makes schools and systems successful. So I guess maybe the underlying question that I have is, like, we've got all these pieces now in place, a really thoughtful approach. How do we foster that type of mindset and culture at schools so that there isn't that expectation that we're going to solve this tomorrow, right? That we're going to keep getting better, we're going to learn to dance, I love that metaphor, and that it's going to be an ongoing process, but we're going to stick with it and we're going to get better every day. So I really love that sort of metaphor, and I guess I don't know that you can answer this, because good leaders, I think, just do it, but the key question, I think, is how do you make that, from a systems point of view, that can carry on to other schools as well. So thank you.
That's a key question, right, with everything we do in the district. And I think one of the things that I would just posit from the associate seat is the key collaboration and really being joined at the hip with my colleagues, formerly known as the SSI Associates, but the School Support and Wellbeing School Supervisory Associates, Dr. Moran, Dr. Floyd Cooper, and Ms. Morris, and we have consistent ongoing meetings, and it's not one shop and another shop. We are truly integrated so that as these programs and systems are being developed, there is that horizontal collaboration for implementation through the school support network that supervises and coaches principals.
And I'd like to add that I don't think we do a good enough job explaining this. We say the Canvas page, and then we say it like everybody understands it. So I'm going to stop for a second because it just hit me. So there's a Canvas page. It's a system that we use, and parents use it too. And inside there are lessons, there are platforms, there are reference materials. There's a Canvas page for well-being. So back to something that, Lynn, I like how you make it so very specific in your ask. You asked about mindfulness rooms and wellness rooms. How would you know where to start or what that looks like? In the Canvas page, there's one that you click as a school person. You can click it and it'll show you examples of what is in other people's mindfulness rooms. It'll show you examples and pictures of how mindfulness rooms are set up. The Board of Education also funded kits to start out. So Jeff Donald works on a kit. You get a kit, it's about $1,000, has things that you need to start, and it's not a lot, it's not everything, but you can start your mindfulness room with it. So you can see what it looks like and you can have a place to start. So in terms of your question about kind of some of the norming is what I think you're getting at. How is Quince Orchard isolated, or what do our other schools look like? There are resources for norming those practices outside of supervision and outside of other implementation structures, including that Canvas page. It's a place to go, and then you have a place to start. There are also checklists for well-being teams. There are the documents that are shared across the system, including well-being team referrals, so they look similar across schools. So there are resources there, and I will say that not everybody uses them to the effect that they could, and that speaks to our need to improve the communication around it, but there's a platform for that to norm practices.
And if I can just add, just from my experience at multiple different schools that have started this type of work, some of it is organic community building, and the QO video just beautifully illustrates how everybody was on the same team. And to your point, President Wolf, having lots of people in the kitchen makes you nervous, but if they are supported and working together, including with multidisciplinary groups, as you mentioned, or cross-agency experiences in terms of learning, it becomes a very wide net for students. And as long as everybody knows, I can tell you as a school doc, and maybe I'm the kind of person who makes myself comfortable in your living room, people would, connect me with students. And sometimes it wouldn't be one of the health staff. It would be, the coach or the special education teacher, and they all knew how to plug in to the system. And within the system, we could make decisions like, this kid might be better served by this part of the system. So having a big system, as long as there's a culture of relying on each other, which may look different for each school, but also the structural supports for collaboration, mutual learning, and learning from our evaluative systems, that can help it grow.
Thank you. I just want to make one more point. During our visits last week, we had the opportunity to meet with a group of students, leadership at one school, and they made a comment that I've heard consistently at other schools, and that is that kids don't know what's available for mental health. Now, I know that we have been working on that issue, but whatever we're doing isn't quite getting there. So I just want the team to think about how we get the message out a little better, because this we heard from several of the students that we met with, that they don't know what's available.
Thank you, President Wolf. I did just want to comment on that. Not only is oftentimes our students our best judge of how the implementation goes, they're also our best communicators, as we've learned in so many different ways. And so that was really critical when we were able to get some of that feedback from our students. But I think a big next step is, yes, we continue to look at ways that we get this information out to schools, but also going into the space of having our students help us communicate these programs to one another in a way, because it just feels differently as well for the other student who's seeking to receive, to hear that message from a peer. in a meaningful way. So thank you for elevating that, because we continue to turn back to our students to help us solve some of the challenges that we're working through, like the communication.
I just wanted to touch upon that point, President Wolf. So a couple things with respect to communication. We had some wonderful upgrades to our central office website last year, where I think that they came before the board and shared that last year. One of the things we were able to do with communications in August is to take the key links and put them at the top of every school's website. So previously we had only COVID resources. So most of the time when parents want to find a resource, they go to the school's website quite often. And so now all of that is front and center. The first thing you see is a link to all of the spaces here in central office, and then you will also see a link that will take you to the resources at your school. Additionally, we've been working again with the technology office. So beginning in, I believe, the end of September and then monthly thereafter, we will be communicating directly with students through their Canvas page, right? We know students I have a 17-year-old senior. It's tough to get them to check email, right? And we know we text people at home and we send parents emails and they check them. But one thing he has to see every day when he logs into class is his home Canvas page. And so you can send a global message. Principals do this all the time. But we haven't necessarily accessed the leverage of the global message. So beginning in the end of September, our office from each of our departments are going to be sending a monthly update on what's happening in our spaces and what services are available and where they can find them. And maybe, I don't know if Ms. Thomas can speak to what it looks like in communicating services at QO.
So thank you for the question, President Wolf. As you were asking, I was thinking actually about today. So when I left, we had just wrapped up what we call Cougars Connect. And it is our weekly advisory time where we infuse elements of Leader in Me, and we also think about things that are coming up in terms of student social emotional well-being beyond just the Leader in Me implementation. And as I was leaving today, a group of students who have now named themselves Cougars United was meeting with representation from every single Cougars Connect classroom of students who self-identified that they want to be leaders and to be able to be the voice of what it means to be well and the supports that are in place for social emotional wellness at Quince Orchard. So I actually, if you follow me on Twitter, it's on my Twitter page. I did tweet out because that's how we make a change. We empower our students, we give them voice, we give them space, and then we let them do it. And so that's where the difference is made. And as I was walking out, a student came up and he said to me, Mrs. Thomas, can I be part of making the videos? I'm in the TV production class, and I'm an ambassador. I am part of the Cougars United Ambassador team, but now I know that I could help to make the Leader in Me videos. I could make all these things a little bit better. And so that's where I think we need to be really purposeful in enlisting student voices and allow them to get it out beyond our emails. You know, whatever social media post they use, go for it and get it out there.
Thank you. Ms. Silvestri.
Thank you. I also wanted to echo the great presentation as well as the memo. I thought that was very comprehensive. And as the chair of strategic planning, I wanted to put a plug in for our February meeting. I don't know if it's gotten to you yet, Mr. Monteleone, but we will be looking at this topic again in terms of effectiveness. So we are doing a lot. I think we're doing fabulous things. What is working? What is not working? Where do we need to shift our resources? Where is there bigger bang for the buck for our students that need the most support, and then for every student? So I invite you to pay attention to that, because while we're doing great things, we need to know what is working well, what implementation needs to be shifted because maybe it's not going in the direction that we want it to go. And the MTSS data collection tool is a game changer. I have always been concerned that we have so many resources in this county, right? We have so many resources, but we never know, is it reaching the students that need it the most? And I am hopeful that this data collection tool will be able to tell us who accessed these services. Is it the students that are truant? Is it the students that are getting suspended? how is it impacting every student? Is our student survey going to change in terms of stressors? So I'm very happy that that's finally in place, and I'm looking forward to seeing who are we serving? How is this working? I am very, I understand, I can really understand how the students that are, I'm always concerned about students getting suspended, the incident reports. We get serious incident reports for every school, and so I can visualize how the well-being teams and the interventions are going to help that population. I'm less clear about, so I guess we should see a reduction in serious incident reports. That might be a measure of success. But I'm less clear on how these interventions are touching every student. So there's advisory, but some kids like advisory, some people hate advisory. What does that look like at the middle school level? How is it touching the average student, not the kid that's getting in trouble all the time, but the average student to improve their wellness? That is not clear to me. Let's see. I'd like to hear more about staff well-being. It was mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, but we didn't cover that today. Maybe that's for another conversation if you don't want to talk about that today. And thank you for mentioning budget. Yes, we need to build this into our budget. It's part of our strategic plan. We were able to make it happen with ESSER funds. But nobody can say that this is not important. This is not a pillar of our work going forward. So we have to be mindful of that as we begin our budget process for this year. And finally, I hope that we're looking at sleep, because I think our parent community wants us to look at sleep as a component of well-being for our students. And I know other school districts have taken it on this year. So I hope that we are studying how that's working and how big of a lever it is for student well-being in our district. So thank you so much for the work.
Did you want me to address the
all of them, please? Yes.
Okay. Well, I would just say I'm happy to join your strategic planning team, right, in January. I would like to say with the MTSS platform, we also believe it has the potential to be a game changer. And there have been initial trainings over the summer with our social workers and our personnel workers and some of our counseling leaders. And we know we have to bring this to scale with all of our folks who are school-based. So I have had several preliminary meetings with the developers of this platform, and we are building out that full-scale training plan as we speak. So we hope to be able to like bring this to fruition, because we see it the exact same way you do. With respect to staff well-being, and it's not specifically something that directly falls under my personal purview, but I will say this: certainly with our central service staff that are within the Office of School Support and Well-being, we are in our second year of having our focus, part of our learning progression. We come together with our full team, and we started this last year. Our goal, like our theme, has been fostering relationships rooted in trust, right, as the key mechanism for well-being. And we started this work last year. It was also a goal last year. It continues to be, and we continue that as part of our work internally. With respect to schools, I could give you a school perspective from my 7 years as a principal, but I know that this, and I'm certainly Ms. Thomas could speak to what they're doing at QO, but we try to give the schools all of the resources that they need to be able to foster those professional environments to uplift the spirits of their staff and ensure that their staff are well. And so I know one of the ways that many principals are approaching this, we can provide EAP and we can provide the staff luncheon with the good food and all of that, but our staff will tell us that the way that we feel well is when the conditions in which we are working foster our wellness, so that we have clear and timely communication, when our voice is respected, when we are part of the decision-making process, then we feel respected, and it makes us want to come to work every day. And I know firsthand that our principals and our directors and supervisors who work with them are really reiterating that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Harris?
I just want to build off something that you already have in place that I've seen work very effectively, and that is that a number of your staff have gone through a series of trainings to the National Bodies Network around circle keeping. And it's clear to me that PCCs, ETCs, and other PPWs have gone through that training and have their own kind of circles that they do amongst themselves. And I was happy to hear about this recently because I talked to one of them about 2 weeks ago. And she shared that, like, yeah, you know, we're still doing that. So I think that the more that we continue to support that is a good thing, to at least supporting your staff. I just want to acknowledge Margarita Borges because she was responsible for making that happen for her staff.
Thank you. Ms. Harris and then Dr. Daka.
Thank you for all of this. There's a lot here. There's a lot here. And one of the things that struck me initially is we have a lot of promises to keep here with all of these work that we're doing, and echoing my colleagues and saying, and I keyed on something you said earlier, Mr. Monteleone, which was we are really focused on decreasing the variability of our key initiatives across the school system, because we all know there is a lot of variability school to school in how well these things are being implemented and with how much fidelity. And so I'll be really interested to see how we are monitoring and benchmarking and ensuring that no matter what school a student or a staff member is in, they are having this kind of fully infused, trauma-informed, wellness-centered experience every day. Because that, I think, is the contract that you are setting up right here. And so we have to meet that expectation. And so, Mrs. Thomas, I love what you said. I feel like you channel something I feel so very strongly about, which is that we have to empower our students to partner with us on every area of work we do, or we will not be the best school system that we can be. And so I would just echo too, empowering our students to help with the messaging that our central office is going to be creating to get out core information to our students, because I do hear from a lot of students, I don't know, what services are there, as some of my students mentioned, some of my colleagues mentioned, when I visited some schools last year, or last week, not last year, I saw some of these newly created wellness spaces, but they were empty and blank and, office furniture, white walls, no people. So keeping us informed on the progress of getting those actually up and running, as well as the students that populate and the staff who populate those schools who are waiting to see what's going to happen. And one thing that you also mentioned, a key to the empowering students, you mentioned, I think it was you, Mrs. Jornby, that said, students can make referrals. Students can refer a peer to their school well-being team or to a counselor. Do students know they can do that? Do they know how to do that? Because we all know that they're our best ally. Students are our best ally in supporting their other students because they know things that nobody else knows. And so empowering the students to make that referral and to have the courage to speak, I think, is also kind of key to the mission. And so, I'll be really looking for that data collection, monitoring piece. And I would suggest too, I don't want to tell anybody how to do it, but since the wellness spaces are so successful in some of our schools and amazing resources, and there are the kits that you mentioned that can go to every single school, maybe ask every school, take an image of your wellness space, your Zen Den, put it up on your website, share that out with information on where it is. If students are going, I don't know where it is. And then how do you get there? Because I also had students say to me, I don't know how I get there. Do I have to ask for a pass? Can I just go? Do I need permission? How do I get to that calming space if I need it, want it? So I'm going to end that piece. So I do have a couple of questions, and Mr. Cardona, I am so happy to see you here because I'm such a fan of the work that you and your team do, your positive youth development work, Street Outreach Network, now called School Outreach Network, getting my acronyms right, is so important because But I also appreciated too, I think, again, it was you, Mr. Monteleone, that recognized as a school system, we want to make sure that our schools aren't creating anxiety and stress and trauma. And so this is part of the work that we're doing. But a lot of what comes in, a lot of the stress and trauma and anxiety and, how that comes out in less than positive ways, our students are bringing that in from the community. And the work that Mr. Cardona's team does is in the community. It's that community building work. It's that community intervention work. It's that bridge building work. It's that diffusing of conflict and prevention work. And so a couple of questions for you. So you mentioned that the Positive Youth Development Team expansion has happened and that hiring has happened. But are those people trained and ready to go, or are we still looking at a bit of a lead time before they're going to be a resource?
So I've been working, thank you. I've been working very closely with my colleague, Kirsten Anderson, over in Monica Martin's shop, and we've been working on the development of those training pieces. Because from my perspective, like you said earlier, we want to make sure, while we recognize that this is not necessarily a wellness center, we want to do our best in intention to maintain the fidelity of what the wellness center does. And so part of that is ensuring that the practitioners, in this case the positive youth development specialists, have developed the same skill sets that school outreachers or some staff workers have. So we have a series of trainings coming up in the next couple of months with programs like the BUILD program and also through the National Bodies Network as well, so that they all go through the same training. And I can't emphasize how important that is, because MCPS has already invested in this already. So we've got some of the staff that I mentioned earlier, or some of the practitioners or areas in MCPS that have gone through the same training. And so how you build uniformity in that approach is going to strengthen the outcomes for the students, because again, what makes the wellness center so effective is, like, they don't know the difference between the staff in Mark's shop or my shop, right? It's like a seamless process. Everyone's kind of trained in the same way and speaks the same narrative or same language.
And one thing I kind of picked up on, and so I have a question. So we have school-based wellness centers in 6 of our high schools. And what we're referring to, the spaces that have been created in our 19 other high schools, are bridges to wellness. So our school-based wellness centers provide services to a whole family. Do our bridges to wellness centers, are they also providing family services, or is it just the students in that school? Anybody?
I mean, from in all honesty, I would have to speak into the HHS folks about my understanding, right? And we can get back to you with the definitive language, is that it's focused on students at this time due to the resources and the staff that are on site. And that's why it is a bridge to a wellness center.
Okay.
And as we develop those spaces that are commensurate with the 6 that we already have, that we could expand those services. But I'm speaking from my understanding.
Yeah, okay.
And I can speak a little bit in terms of how that looks on the ground in practice. It's impossible to take care of a child without understanding what's going on with their family. Children exist as members of families and communities. So one of the components of the wellness-based staff will be a care manager. And that person will be able to leverage community resources outside of what's available in the wellness space for the family. And then the other thing that I will bring up is that in the established wellness centers, the youth development teams are already doing some parent support work at recognizing, especially during this pandemic, that that's a critical component in Tier 2 intervention. So some of this work is already happening with families, because it's just part and parcel of wellness and mental health, and then that key care manager will be able to connect families to other resources.
Okay, yeah, and thank you for acknowledging that, because I do think, ensuring that our students are well means we have to make sure they're in a healthy space when they're not with us. And so being able to connect with families is key to that mission as well. So thank you. And maybe this goes to Mr. Cardona again. So we also have a need, we're expanding our staff around our school outreach network. So are those positions filled and ready to operationalize in our schools?
So we're currently in the process of preparing the advertising for those new positions. But rest assured that as we speak right now, we are at 13 high schools already that we have been working with since last year. So we will be returning, working with the school social workers as well, but looking forward once we have the new staff on board so that we can be at every single school as well.
Good, thank you. Yeah, and I was very happy to see a lot of focus on how our MCPS staff who are clinically trained will be interfacing and collaborating with the DHHS staff in our wellness centers and our Bridge to Wellness places so that we're maximizing our ability to support. And then the last thing, I just want to encourage, as we're doing our own monitoring of how we're rolling out all of this work and how well we are succeeding in supporting students and staff, I just want to remind everybody out there that our customers are the best benchmark of how well we're doing any of this. And there are 20 public comment slots available at every board meeting, and we want to hear from you how things are going in your schools. So that's my shameless plug, because we only had, 6 initially today, and I think in the end only 9 of those slots were taken. So
Thank you. Dr. Daka.
Yes, I just wanted to say what an extraordinary school system we have here. I've been here a long time. Many of you know that. I worked here 33 years, and then I've been on the board 16. So I've seen all these aspects. And I worked at Blair High School. We did everything, all kinds of hearings, all kinds of levels of students, because it is a school that has like 5 different schools in it. So I learned a lot there. I learned a lot when I was a principal. And I just wanted to say that linkage to learning is something we've had for a long time, but the families were always involved. So this will be a tradition that will be carried on, but it will be really expanded. And the other thing that I like saying about the school system is that we find out from other school systems that they have 1 counselor for every 20 students. No. I know, that's an exaggeration, but they try to make it look like they have so many counselors. However, we have counselors, we have social workers, we have psychiatrists, and we have PPWs. The other school systems don't have that, so I don't want you to feel inadequate when that comes up. And don't feel inadequate when we're compared to the schools in Europe and in Finland and Singapore. We educate everyone. And we try to do a good job with all of them. So I just had to say that about us. This was a tremendous presentation. I really enjoyed reading the material and having you come and talk about it today. I want to thank you for that, Mr. Montaglione. And I missed your name. Wallace?
Ms. Doranby.
Oh, you're Doranby. I've seen your name. Okay. I got your name now. Okay, and Dr. Kapunen and Mark Hodge and Mr. Cardona, whom I have known for a long time. Thank you for your presentation, and it's really been, it's something that we all need to know about, and I agree that we need to get that information out there to parents, to students as well. And I just wanted to say Ms. Rubin has been behind all of this for at least 2 years, maybe longer. And restorative justice has been a piece of what she has started out with. So it's come to fruition here. It's really an excellent thing, and I'm really excited about it. I want to thank Ms. Thomas, because she inherited Quince Orchard. And the community of Quince Orchard is very concerned about their students, always has been. And the former principal, quite a long time ago, I guess, Carol Working, told her staff, you pick your students and you work with each one of them. And when that happened, the achievement really did go up. So I want to thank her, and thank you for working on this. And I want to thank Dr. McKnight for being very supportive of this for her years here, her last 2 especially. And I want to thank everybody, all the social workers that we have here, and there's John over there, for helping us with this. We've needed to have more social workers for a long time, and I'm so glad we're doing that. Now, I do have a question. I did read the text. And this, you don't have to answer this, but I was really surprised at this. when you get to the elementary school, it says, "I need help with," and this is slide 6, in case anybody wants to look at it. And bullying had a high yes response. They said they didn't need any help with bullying. I was really surprised by that for the elementary school students. I don't know about the high school students, but obviously they do need help with that. But thank you all.
Thank you. And I see Ms. Mandrowski and then Mr. Kim.
Yeah, hi, thank you. So in an effort of being short and sweet here, I too want to join my colleagues in thanking especially Dr. McKnight and your staff for all of the work that they've done. This was a fabulous presentation. I very, very much appreciated it. I will say, I want to wish you a happy birthday, Dr. McKnight, and say that in the spirit of mental health and wellness, I hope you're going to do something fun after this meeting. But a couple of things that have been mentioned, the first day of school tours and things like that were fantastic. And, I know at least Dr. McKnight, and I believe one of my colleagues also has commented on, the fabulous spaces that we saw. And I will say this year, more so than ever in my time on the board, I really did feel like it wasn't even just about the wellness spaces or the rooms that, as my one child used to refer to, that used to be as the sin bin, that is now the Zen den, which love. But basic classrooms were just warmly decorated and warmly lit. And you could tell that the teachers really took a lot of time to go in and make these spaces not just their own, but somewhere that their students could feel good about going to. So those it's little things that make such a big difference, I find so often. So I just hope all of our staff, from everyone here to everyone, in all of our schools, and down to our bus drivers, know how much we all appreciate the work that they do every day to make sure that our students have positive school experiences. The linkages to learning programs and things like that are such a huge part and partnership for us with this work. So I appreciate that we're really continuing to look at ways of supporting programs like that and the wellness centers, working collaboratively with our partners. I will put a little plug in for when we're talking about how we're really reaching to Ms. Silvestre's point, every child, and making sure every child knows what we offer and where to go and who to talk to. We talk about listening to our students, and the one thing that I've heard from our students is a mental health day. One day where everybody's talking about the same thing, and presentations can be made at the school level of here's what this person does, here's what that person does, and here's what you can do if you need support. Still pushing for that. And trying to think, there was something else I was going to ask in terms of a question, but I know what it was. We also during the first day visits or first week visits, talked to some schools who were working on the Leader in Me programs and the expansions of that. And there was a little bit of a discussion about concerns with the programs not being provided in multiple languages. And I was just kind of curious where we are with that, and if we've, if kind of figured out any way to address concerns that might be there.
Yeah, Ms. Mondrowski,
You guys can hear me, right?
Yeah, I could hear you. I'll field your question about Leader in Me. So as was shared, I believe at the August 23rd meeting, there's been a lot of revisions that have been made through the lens of cultural proficiency. I mean, substantive work based on the feedback that we got from a variety of stakeholders. And we've seen a much smoother rollout for cohort 2, just because we had more runway time and we learned right? How to improve. I will get back to you about translation, right, of the lessons. I do not have anything to report to you on that right now, but I promise you I will follow up with the board on where that may be. And I guess Ms. Jarambi, do you have information there?
Yes, I do know it's available in Spanish. I know that it is not, those are not all of our core languages, but I do know that it is available in English and Spanish. And we can work with our colleagues to see other languages that may be available and how to make that accessible.
Okay, appreciate that so much. And lastly, I just want to thank Ms. Thomas and the QO community for sharing their story. Consistency across our schools of rolling out of programs and initiatives is always a concern of mine. But you're doing great work over there. I will say, go Cougars. And keep up the good work, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kim.
Yeah, thank you again for the fantastic presentation. And to all the social workers and interns in the room, thank you for being here as well. Yeah, there was just a couple of pieces that I wanted to ask a little bit about. First, of course, there is a tremendous value in the data-driven approach kind of being taken on. I wanted to ask about the district-wide wellness survey, thinking about some of that data that we were looking at earlier. I know it was mentioned that 209 schools, all 209 schools were engaged, which is fantastic. I was hoping to hear a little bit more about to what extent that actually reached students, to what kinds of students we heard from, to make sure that the data we're looking at and using to drive forward this work around wellness is reflective of the needs of students.
Certainly. And so what I prepared, our team prepared, I should say, for the board, and which was in your packet, was really an aggregate look, right, at each level. We certainly have the ability, and I do not have it here in front of me, Mr. Kim, but I will absolutely get it. It's a dashboard, and you can filter by school, you can filter by student population, if you can filter by service, what have you. And so we can certainly get that data by school or by at the district level. So I will make sure that you have that.
Fantastic, thank you. I know we've been talking a lot about those physical wellness spaces in the school building and what we can do to make sure that across the board at all schools, those truly are effectively supporting students. I kind of was hoping that we could talk a little bit about how that same principle could be applied to that scheduled time for student wellness. I know we talked a little bit about those advisory periods, and some students might like them, some students might not. I've heard a lot of mixed feedback as well from my peers at different schools, how different schools have implemented periods like that. So yeah, I was kind of hoping if someone could kind of speak to how you've seen those kind of vary school to school, and what steps we could take similar to what we're doing with those wellness spaces.
Sure. So I'll speak to it largely from, I think, the high school lens, right, where you have the highest degree of variability. And that is where I served as a principal in this district. It happens to be where I also have a senior in the district, a student there. And so middle schools, as you know, have had a culture of having advisory or that block in the middle of their schedule as long as I can remember. And the elementary schools do an outstanding job of embedding that into each of their classroom spaces. And I'm not gonna lie, right? It was a challenge for me personally as a principal to try to get advisory to scale and to decrease that variability within a staff of 230, let alone a district this size. That is key to our work this year. It is a front-burning challenge on my plate for sure. And I think that one thing to keep in mind is prior to the pandemic, right? Many high schools had advisory to hand out paperwork at the beginning of the year, to hand out report cards, and then to come back and maybe do interims or something. And that was it. And so I know that we have a lot of work to do in this area, but I think it's also important to tell the story of where we were just several years ago. And out of every crisis, right, there is great opportunity. And I do believe that our system and our schools took that opportunity to scale up advisory. Clearly, QO has a wonderful example of that, as do many of our high schools. And so one of the things that I am engaging with and have communicated with my associate colleagues is getting a snapshot look at those high schools. Like, where is it in your schedule? What is happening in that space? What are you doing? How are you? And look, we know some of our teachers will tell us it's another class to teach. So it's incumbent upon us to decrease those barriers, right? So if teachers are telling us there's barriers to implementation, what are those barriers? Where do they exist? How can we tackle them? Same thing from our students. And so, schools have been creative. I have another son who's a freshman in a different school in this district, and instead of doing a block with an advisory teacher, they're having a rolling schedule where it is attached to, say, this week it's their English teacher, the next week it's going to be, or by period, right? So it's spread around, and because what our students have told us, if you send us to an advisory once every 2 weeks with a teacher we don't have class with and we don't build relationships with them, it's kind of an artificial experience. So some of our schools are putting that onto the back end, and it's a rotating schedule. So there's been a lot of creativity and autonomy by our principals to develop this, and I would never want to take that leadership or that autonomy away. But we are at a place right now, as you indicate, to take a look at where are we? We've come a long way, specifically at the high school level. So let's assess the current landscape, see where those barriers exist, and then figure out how to continue to do that work. And that is exactly where we are right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. And then lastly, I know Dr. Jopp just mentioned earlier a little bit about the caseload that counselors and psychologists might face and kind of the ways we can mitigate that. I understand that many of the new counselors joining MCPS this year are working part-time. Something the board has had conversations about in relation to public comment recently is having school psychologists work part-time. So I'm wondering if how that's been explored, if at all so far, and if it can be moving forward.
So I was really grateful to be able to meet with Ms. Dara Goldberg, who spoke at the last board testimony. We had a meeting together with our colleagues in OHRD to talk about just that. We are always open to any creative measure to fill any vacancies that we have. And one of the things that I would encourage, and one of the things that we can work on in the way that we advertise, is it's known in schools. So as a principal, one of the things that I know is if I have a math teacher and I have two people who want to be 0.5, both math teachers, that 0.5 position can be 1.0 between two, right? Or in some cases, 0.6, 0.4, things like that. So a position can be split, maintaining the 1.0 allocation. Like the budgeting is similar, it's the same. That's true for any of our positions that we have in MCEA. I think it's something that we could always explore. So in the event that I had two social workers who wanted to come on and they were excellent and they were both 0.5, together they equal a 1.0 allocation or a shared allocation. What I'm saying to you, Mr. Kim, is that it is entirely possible, it is entirely doable, it's easily doable, and it's done all the time. What we may not do is necessarily advertise it that way. So for the social worker allocations that we began with, we had 33 allocations. We did advertise them as full-time, but if anyone came forward that was interested in part-time and I had two to be able to create a match, certainly it's possible. And that's something that we can talk about with OHRD. Certainly it's not my wheelhouse, about how we advertise so that people know of the possibility.
Thank you.
Mr. Kim, I just wanted to add a couple of things, because I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge a couple of people responding to your ask. So a couple of things. I need to acknowledge my colleague, Stephanie Zard, because throughout the pandemic, she was very intentional about reaching out to the Sun to help track down students who had been disconnected during that process. So it was kind of a wellness check, but it really helped to get those students who were most at need connected to resources, be it HHS or internally in MCPS. In addition to that, in building off our Bienvenidos initiative that the county and MCPS have been doing, we worked with Everett Davis on a piece where there's a futsal program, Soccer for Change, which is a Department of Recreation program. But we were able to have ETCs come out to those soccer games on Fridays and Saturday evenings outside of the traditional work time. And so it was a really good engagement on that piece. And then the third piece, having to acknowledge Dr. Sullivan, because for several years now, he has provided Sutton staff with passes to football games, basketball games, other opportunities to engage with the young people in a non-traditional setting. And so I know we've been very intentional in working with the PYD staff and the Sutton staff that are part of Bridges to make sure that we're capitalizing off of that as well. We're maximizing that opportunity to engage with students outside the school building, but in the community, or even as things like football games and things of that nature. So we got some good pieces there. But I understand, like President Wolf said, we want to see the data as well to see how that plays itself out.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I really need to move on because a couple of our members have other commitments this afternoon. But Ms. Harris, did you have a quick point? I saw your light on.
Yeah, just a question relating to our CREA program. Our CREA program students are at Seneca Valley and at Edison. They're supposed to be an Edison-Wheaton partnership. 90% of the CREA students are at Edison. They are not allowed to access the school-based wellness center at Wheaton. What are we doing to serve the needs of those students who are primarily EML and newcomers?
So I am personally working with Dr. Kroll, the Director of Health and Human Services, to identify money to add additional hours to the Wheaton Wellness Center for the evening, specifically for those CREA students. So as soon as we can get that funding, and then I'll have to amend our contract with our provider to provide those health services in the evenings. But we are absolutely working on that to get that in place as soon as possible.
Do you have a timeline?
My hope is before December. So, yeah.
And just to add from the positive youth development perspective with the wellness centers, thanks to a lot of the ARPA funding that we received, we were able to expand the operation hours at those wellness centers, specifically be it Seneca Valley and Wheaton, so that we can serve the young people who have those needs as well.
The other piece that you mentioned that I'm curious about, and if it's something that we had decided I'm willing to have a discussion to fix that, is Edison not having access to the wellness center at Wheaton. If that's the case, I'm certainly absolutely willing to look into that and make that change. Personally, they're co-located. Dr. Munzie is kind of in charge of both. So it doesn't really make sense that we would exclude those students simply because that's not their home school. But that is absolutely something I will look into.
Just wanted to highlight, sorry to interrupt, but that Edison also, in addition to our high schools, has its own social worker.
Even though it's not comprehensive, they did make a request and we did prioritize them. And she's here, she just raised her hand. So Edison does have some mental health support that's on site.
And so Dr. McKnight gets the last word on this.
Yes, it would be remiss for me not to, first of all, thank everybody that's in this room. I think the best part of this presentation was, yes, we get to sit at the table and talk about the work, but the heroes of the work are sitting out here. And for us to be able to bring to life what they do every day is so important. And I'm just very grateful because what we've talked about in terms of the priority coming to life, it has been because of the work that they do. And doing that in partnership with you, Mr. Hodge, Mr. Cardona, the collaboration with Dr. Kapunen has just been magnificent. And I want to say this isn't work that just started. I walked into Magruder High School after we experienced a tragedy the day after. They both were there, sitting with the staff. So while we were very much a part of different organizations, the work is always cohesive. And for that, I'm so grateful for that. And thank you for allowing us to be able to build this. I'll just quickly end with, we talked a lot about this being the beginning part of the work. I want to continue to elevate that. If you think about school before COVID-19, you didn't see much of this at all, okay, at all. And so I want to elevate that because we're very much into the process of implementing this work because it's so important. It's the right work, but we're going to learn from it. We're going to continue to shine a light on those pieces, as you said so well, Principal Thomas, to make sure that we are doing what's right for students. And most importantly, this was brought up, but we have to brand wellness. When I say we, that's us as a school system and us as a community, as a part of how we live. It is not to just be reactive to what's happening, but when everybody sees how this is important, and this is how we increase not just longevity of life, but happiness and fulfillment generally and it doesn't need to start when there's a problem. And so I think it's important for all of us to continue to brand that wellness piece as just a way of living. And so I want to thank you for your transparency, your work, and everything that you've presented in this presentation today.
Thank you. Just give them, I'm gonna have to give them.
I was wondering why there are so many people in social work.
It was great to see them all.
Brenda, did you see that John Roberts is a social worker?
Okay, we're going to have to move on to consent items.
Take it outside.
At this time, I'm going to be trying to give them a little space to get a number of people in here. All right, are we ready? We're now up to item number 7, consent items. I'm going to pull item 7.2, STEM enrichment and training. Are there any other items that anyone wants to pull? Ms. Harris?
I'd like to pull 7.1 just to discuss 2 items in there, and then item 7.4.
7.4. Does anybody else have anything?
We do 7.3?
I'm sorry, what'd you say, Ms. Mandrowski?
7.3, please.
7.3, Ms. Silvestri?
No, I was ready to move them.
Okay, so can we get a motion to move? It looks like 7.2 and 7.5.
It's 7.1 through 4. 7.1 through 4.
No, so we pulled, Lynn pulled 7.1, 7.4 was pulled, 7.3, so it's just 7.2 and 7.5.
7.2, I thought you already pulled, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, I have
You have
7.2.
it.
So what is left? It's just 7.5.
5 and
The only
6
one.
is left. 5 and 6.
I moved
Okay.
items 7.5 and 7.6 in block.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hand. And that is unanimous. Ms. Harris, you want to start with 7.1?
Yes, I just, if we could get Mr. Adams to just discuss briefly, the 2 items I was interested in are items 15.jlp.023 and item R150505. They are both related to HVAC, contracts for HVAC maintenance and materials. And as we've all seen in many of the schools that we tour, that HVAC concerns are sort of ongoing. We have a lot of aging infrastructure. And I guess my question, as I look at these 2 contract items, gets to how are we doing both with our internal staff and our external staff at having the capacity we need to deal with the HVAC challenges and the aging infrastructure that we have to service every day?
So that is an excellent question, and it's certainly a bit of a complicated one. For this particular item, we are bringing forward contractual services to assist in some of the major HVAC equipment that we have. But I would just start by saying we have over 27 million square feet of building of educational space. So extremely proud of our maintenance folks. We have very few in the grand scheme of things. We have numbers that are each individual is basically, when you look at it from a square footage perspective, covering over 1 million square feet by themselves. So when we think about contractual services, it does play a huge part. We constantly are looking for ways to be innovative with our staffing. We look for partnerships with the Construction Trades Foundation. Look to partner with students that are coming up to really promote this as a as a successful career venture and one that we welcome and can support. But it is a tremendous amount of work. One of the other items that's on the table today, it does bring this together in terms of how does this impact our capital improvements program. Every time we see funding reduced in the HVAC replacement program, it directly correlates to what we saw last week on high temperatures and days where, you know, our folks are running from school to school and managing emergencies. So it is all very, very related. And then even emerging technologies, right? As things change, we're always looking for ways to train and educate our staff. But I would say this is a critical item for us today. These two items for contractual services to assist, and Dr. McKnight had a really great opportunity to bring us together, and we talked about how the folks that are out there working on the HVAC systems are just as important as the rest of the staff within MCPS, and if they're not successful, right, we see what happens. We see hot buildings, we see students impacted, we see staff impacted. So I'm very proud of this group. It's a small group, and we hope to expand it at some point. But this contract is to assist and to help them manage the workload and the magnitude of what we have across our school district.
Thank you, and I really appreciate the mention of our HVAC programs at Seneca Valley and Edison, because that's our future workforce right there, and you just acknowledged it, so thank you.
Ms. Harris, did you have another one? You want to go ahead and do your other one?
Yeah. Item 7.4, which is a energy savings performance contracting, which I think relates directly to policy ECA sustainability and how we're rolling out that work.
Yes, so this is the contract we've been talking about. We work with students. We've been working with the county officials, but it's an energy performance contract, which essentially brings contractors into our buildings to assess what equipment, what infrastructure could be replaced to really make a big impact on energy reductions, our carbon footprint reduction, and really it's paid for in a large part by the energy savings. So again, this is a way to compensate for any funds that are reduced or that we don't see on the capital side to get more work done. So we're looking at all avenues, and this you won't see something like this impacting either the operating or the capital budget, because it is purely from an energy savings perspective. So very excited about this as part of that sustainability policy and as part of our carbon our footprint reduction, and obviously we'll continue to include students and others involved in this to really build momentum around our sustainability efforts moving forward.
Thank you, and I'm just really proud of the work this system is doing to embrace sustainability as the way we do business, and I think it's a lot of credit to this group and the Policy Management Committee, but also the work that your staff are doing on the ground every day. Yeah.
Okay, next is 7.2, STEM enrichment and training. Ms. Hazel, I know you're joining us.
While Ms. Hazel's joining us, can I make a statement, President Wolf? Or should I wait for that? Okay.
Just hold off a second. Ms. Hazel, there's been a lot of confusion around this because the original document indicated an RFP was issued. Can you speak to that, please?
Yeah, so the original document did state that, and that was an error. I know that it was corrected. The RFP was issued in 2017, and we have just been continuing that partnership. And so we want to, as we are building our relationship with the Kid Museum, continue the work that we are doing. We have 4 programs that we are working through with the Kid Museum, and have issued now a single source for the work with Kid Museum. So that was an error originally put out.
Mm-hmm. And can you tell our viewing audience what single source means?
So because this is such a unique partnership that we have with this particular partner, we have been doing very unique, distinct work with this partner that we don't have a relationship with in any other one of our partners. And so we want to continue that partnership I don't know if there's someone for procurement who can expound on that.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So the single source versus a sole source, I think that's where some of the confusion lies. A single source is a source among multiple sources that can provide a specific service to or a program to MCPS, and we have been working with Kid Museum since 2017, and upon the program initiating in 2017 from the RFP, a couple of years later, those other programs began to develop. So now the program that is in place, that is expanding from middle schools to the elementary schools, is specific to the MCPS's curriculum. So we're considering that single source as unique to MCPS and the program that has been developed over the last 4 years or so.
Okay, Dr. Joftis, you wanted to speak.
Thank you, President Wolf. I just wanted also publicly to state that, as public brought up, that the founder and executive director of Kid Museum, also known as MoCo Kids Co., which was its original name, and what it is I don't know what the technical term is, but how it gets paid is under MoCo Kids Co. is not an intent to hide the fact that that's Kid Museum. The founder and executive director is my wife. I as soon as I was appointed by the board, I notified the ethics review panel. This was in January, I believe. I got back a finding from the ethics review panel saying that as long as I recuse myself from any decisions and I don't engage in certainly lobbying or pushing for any contract, that as long as I recuse myself from any decision making, then everything is above board. So I think there was some confusion in the public that has not happened, or that somehow the board or the system was trying to hide the fact that Kid Museum was run by my wife, and that's not the case. And I just wanted to be transparent about that.
Thank you.
Sorry, I will be recusing myself from any vote on this contract.
Does anybody else have any questions about this? Ms. Harris?
Just a question about the operations side of the work here. I just want to make sure these programs travel to the schools. We don't make the students travel to a location.
It's actually a combination of both. I think that's what makes this really exciting, is that when we partnered with the Kids Museum, they worked with the curriculum office to understand our curriculum, scope and sequence, our standards, and they developed a curriculum that was very much in alignment, but it's much more hands-on, makerspace, those types of things. And part of the program is to have field trips, so that it's a day program, so that we bring students to the Kid Museum 4 times a year. And they are doing lessons that are aligned to what they're learning in school, but it's very hands-on. You'll see kids with goggles and they're making things, tools, using all of the tools, and applying their STEM learning. And we also have that at the middle school. We have it at the elementary school, in some select elementary schools. And then we also have after school programming as well. So we have some things taking place in schools. We have some things where we are actually taking students to the facility to engage. And then we are now also, Kid Museum is providing professional development for many of our teachers so that they can learn how to do the makerspace lessons and bring that to their classrooms as well. So it's a combination.
Okay, yeah, I just want to make sure that there aren't any of these things that are being funded through MCPS that require a student on their own or by their families to get them there.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions or concerns? Ms. Ms. Mandrowski.
Thank you. So my biggest concern at this point is, well, it's a very hefty price tag, and what is incorporated in that. Also, so I think you called it a single. What was the word you used, as opposed to a sole?
Single source.
Why we're not putting out an RFP? A sole source. Sorry, thank you. A single source. So other companies that may have been established, or we will never bid this type of work out, is what you're saying? And how does that work exactly?
No, that's not the case, that we would never bid it out. It depends on the program and what the department wants to develop. So in the future, if there is another type of program that we would establish, it could be bid out via an RFP. It really depends on the department and what types of programs MCPS is wanting to develop. Because this, as I mentioned, was already in place, it grew out of the initial RFP. They are just utilizing that initial program and expanding it across the district.
Okay, so this is already in elementary schools, or it's not, and that's what the price tag is for?
Yes. So we, like I said, we worked with the Kid Museum to really help. They developed their own curriculum really based on what we have taking place in MCPS, which is very unusual. Most of the time when we contract out to vendors, they have something already developed that they're going to go in and put in place. And that did not happen with the Kid Museum. It really grew organically with them sitting with our staff and developing a curriculum based on what we had taking place in the school. So it is very much tailored to MCPS and the grade level. So they went through each grade level with us and our scope and sequence in the curriculum office. And so it started off as just working with middle schools. We're expanded to select elementary schools. And so we want to continue this partnership. And so that is part of the reason why we didn't want to start from scratch. We want to continue the work that we are doing with the Kid Museum. Certainly there are other STEM-related activities that we want to continue to grow, and we would use an RFP to do that with other vendors. But for this particular work, we wanted to continue it.
And is their budgeting and is that public information?
Yes.
I don't know how much money we spend with them or any of our other vendors, frankly, in full, like per year.
Public information. Yes, it's part of the transparency database, and and if you need additional information on any amount that we spend with the vendor, we can provide that.
Okay. Thank you.
If I may, President Wolf, I just wanted to elevate your questions, Ms. Mandrowski, because what you're getting at is, what's causing some of the urgency right now in terms of why we utilize the single source piece. And what I wanted to elevate was, we talked so much about the 3 priorities. Some of what we are trying to do with programming for students with an equitable lens is trying to determine how quickly can we get some of these services into our schools, particularly after looking at the impact of the pandemic. So having that relationship allows us to be able to leverage that at this time, particularly in a meaningful way, to get it directly into our classrooms. But to your point, this is a large school system. We still have much more to do with many more students. So of course, and I just want to reassure you of that, of course, there's going to be much more opportunity for us to be able to engage and work with vendors in a number of different ways to be able to bring a multitude of services to our students in the classrooms, because as we've seen from the presentation today and others, there's just so much that has to be done to continue to incorporate all of our students' needs as a result of the impact that we've experienced the last couple of years. So I just wanted to emphasize that.
No, I really appreciate you saying that. My concern is that this is a 1-year contract for this amount of money. I've never seen the budget for the Kids Museum. And while I understand it's a nonprofit, I'm not sure if this is just for expansion services, how much we're already spending. And I know that this was a program that grew directly with MCPS, which is wonderful. But in terms of providing fair opportunities for all companies, particularly those in Montgomery County, this is just a concern of mine.
Thank you, Ms. Mandrowski. Dr. Daka?
I know that this may be way off the subject, but single sourcing is something that we have done before. I'm not talking about necessarily programs, educational programs or curriculum, but have you ever looked at the school furniture? Duron is practically the only company that prepares furniture for schools, and we have been single sourcing with them. So there are other companies I'm sure that you could point to for that. So it's not unusual.
Ms. Evans, did you want to say something?
No, you know what? So I was just thinking about earlier today we had public comments, and I'm sorry I can't remember the lady's name, but she made me think instantly about Kids Museum and the partnership that we had with them, and talking about early on our commitment to STEM. Thinking about the work that was happening at the middle school level, and I've toured it, and it was like many years ago, but I think my whole takeaway was the entrance of our staff, right, and wanting to do this work because they were seeing how what the kids were doing in the program could help in the classroom. So I just wanted to comment off very early on. It was the board's commitment to trying to find a way to incorporate STEM in the classroom, because we weren't seeing a lot of that. And I don't know, we can send to her all the different things that we're doing around STEM, but I just wanted to point that out, that I think the continuation of the program for me, which is thinking about how much work has gone into the professional development with our teachers to be able to have, to allow our students to have that experience in the classroom. So I just wanted to comment off that, but people are asking great questions, but I just wanted to give the community who's watching, who has not always watched our board meetings, just some a little bit of information about many years ago of the commitment that the board has made around trying to bring more STEM into the classroom. So that's all.
I just want to say that I had the opportunity to go to the Kid Museum's new grand opening, and they are doing amazing work. I don't think anybody doubts that. And I really don't have a problem with continuing this. I think what is causing the issue was it appeared as though we were trying to hide something. So it's clearly a mistake. Yes, we do make mistakes. I mean, we've got a pretty large system. We do make mistakes. But I also want to say, I personally am not a big fan of single sourcing, sole sourcing, either of those concepts, because I think that, and I'm going to tack on to what Ms. Mandrowski is trying to say, I believe, we stifle competition. And so therefore, you know, I'm going to support this because I do think they do great work. But I would like to be very cautious in the future about the use of single source or sole source contracts. So thank you. Thank you. We're now up to, let's see, we did 7-1, 7-2, 7-4, 7-3. Was that who had the question about 7-3? Ms. Mandrowski?
That was me. Yeah, I just would like someone to just kind of explain it to me a little bit. It was very vague to me in terms of what transitional resources are and what this means.
Thank you, Ms. Mandrowski. We're having Ms. Hazel come back, as that is her item.
Okay.
This one. Here.
I'm sorry. Can you restate what it is?
I apologize. Can you restate the question? I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, sure. No, I was just saying, I don't know what transitional resources necessarily means. Is it just books? Because it's a really great reading company, and I
Yes, we have our really great reading resources for our science of reading curriculum. And I'm sorry, hold on, give me one moment.
Yeah, that's okay.
I got a little thrown
I
off.
didn't know if this is, so is this part of our curriculum then? Or this is, you're saying this is a supplemental, or? Take your time. I just really, when I read it, I was like, I don't actually know what this means.
Can I ask a question in conjunction with Mrs. Smodrowski? Is this part of what we're doing around structured literacy? Because when I went to Fox Chapel Elementary School, they mentioned the RBR.
Yes.
And I was trying to talk with Ms. Webb about it, but I couldn't remember the acronym.
Yes, I apologize. Yes, it is our really great reading. It is the resource that we are using for our Science of Reading program. So that is the main foundational skills resource that we are using.
Okay. Thank you. That's what I was just curious about, because it says transition, or reads transitional, and I wasn't sure.
Yes, it is the really great reading is the primary resource that we are using to support our Science of Reading.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, why do we call it transitional?
That's the name that I don't know. That is the name that is given from the company.
Oh.
Yeah. So.
Okay. Okay, we didn't pick it. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Kindergarten to 12, and so you transition from one place to another. Maybe that's what they're doing.
Yeah, I'd have to look into why it's called that, but that is the resource we are using for our Science of Reading.
Got it. Thank you.
We're now up to 7.5. Go ahead.
Move to adjourn.
Well, no. I know you want to go, but 7.5, someone raised a question about 7.5.
It wasn't me. Oh, you looked at me like, do your job, Carlos.
Oh.
No, we are ready.
Okay.
7.5.
You know, my agenda doesn't match the current numbering.
We need to move them in parts, but make sure that
I know, I'm
Scott's
going to move
excluded
them,
from the
I'm
one.
going to move each one separately, just to be sure that everybody is in agreement. So, can I get a motion to move 7.1?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hand. And that is unanimous. Can I get a motion to move 7.2?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hand. And that is Ms. Evans, Dr. Daka, Ms. Wolf, Ms. Silvestri, Ms. Harris, and Mr. Kim. All opposed, raise your hand. Any abstention? Are you opposed or abstaining? Opposed?
I'm all opposed, yeah.
Okay, opposed is Ms. Mondrowski. And, I'm sorry, Dr. Joftis is abstaining, okay?
Correct.
All right, got that. All right, let's see, we did 7.1, 7.2, 7.3. Can I get a motion for 7.3?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hand. That is unanimous. Thank you. 7.4.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hand. And that is unanimous. Have we covered all of them, Ms. Van Day? Okay. So I think we've finished with that part. All right. Item number 8 is for information only. Number 9, can I get a motion to move 9.1 and 9.2 in block?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hand. And that is unanimous.
I have one observation.
What?
I have one observation, if I may, real quick. I just noticed the room was full earlier. We have Caitlin Peets in the room today. And I believe today is her last day reporting. This is your last Board of Ed meeting for Bethesda Beat. I did notice you earlier. I'm sorry, because the room was so filled. But I saw you and I was like, I just want to thank you for all of your work with covering, particularly over the last couple of years of COVID-19. I have to tell you, when we were across the the hall, and I know the board feels the exact same way in seeing the year, trying to account for the story of how we were working through so many challenges. Really meant a lot. So I know you're moving on to, I think it's Ed Week. Ed Week. So wishing you very well, but just wanted to thank you for your years of service and support, and particularly over the last couple of years, moving our community.
Yes, thank you.
Tough but fair.
Okay, does anyone have any new business? Okay, at this time, though, I'd like to acknowledge that each committee chair has worked with the board office to map out the agenda for their 2022-23 committee meetings. We're bringing them now to the full board for approval. So can I get a motion to approve the annual plans?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Can I just say, Ms. Wolf, I just want to publicly thank you and the board office staff for the work they did. This was probably the best process of doing this that I can remember. So thank you all for that.
Okay. All right. What's on the floor currently? Because we have to have a motion to have it not lie on the table for 30 days first. So can I get a motion to waive that requirement that it lie on the table for 30 days?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Scott, I see you looking questionable.
Yeah, I just don't know what that means.
Oh, we usually, if we have something that's new business, we bring it forward this meeting, and then 30 days later, we bring it back for a vote. So we had made the decision as a board that we would handle all new business that way. So we want to waive that requirement because this is new business, okay? So all in favor, raise your hand. That is unanimous. Now can I get, a motion to approve the plans?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. And that is unanimous. All right, item number 10 is for information only. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn again.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hand. That is unanimous. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you all.